Ponytails podcast. Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ponytails podcast. My name is Andres Gamboa. I am the host of the show. Thank you for being here. If this is your first time, well, welcome. A couple of things, a couple of housekeeping things. One, this is the podcast about people who sold books door to door. If this isn't your first episode, still listen in because it's fun to do this part, and it's the only time we get to do some announcements. So there's some stuff that you might want to hear about. But yes, like I said, my name is Andres. This podcast, we interview people who sold books door to door in college for Southwestern Advantage. It's one of the oldest internships in America, if not the oldest. And it's kind of a crazy gig, which is why we have fun on this show. People come and tell us their stories about their time going door to door, what happened during that whole time. Some people sell for one summer, some people sell for multiple summers, and then they go on to do some pretty cool things. And so we ask them about what they're up to now. We share some good stories. We cry, we laugh, all of the things. And so hopefully you guys enjoy this one. If this is your first one, make sure you hit subscribe. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are on Spotify. Leave us a review. Make sure you follow us along on Facebook and Instagram, of course. I think we're developing our TikTok as we speak. So we're trying to be as accessible as possible. If you know of a book person that needs to hear this show, if you know that they're like, oh my gosh, my friend, my nephew, my cousin, my uncle, my husband, my wife, they sold books and they need to hear about this, make sure you guys share this with them. We are loving being able to reach as many people as possible. And it's been a cool ride so far. We started back in November of 2020 during that flu that was going on. You guys might have heard about that. And now we're here sitting in March, and it's going better than ever. And I'm excited about it. Because of that, I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about our Bizzler trip that we have coming up. If you haven't heard, I don't know why you wouldn't have heard about this, but August 15th through the 19th, we have our trip to Mexico. We're going to Cancun to the Riviera Maya. It's for a fun getaway where you can come and hang out with people who sold books from all the different types of times that they've been around. It is open registration right now. You can register through May 1st. It's $1,500 a person. Spouses are welcome. Even if your spouses did not sell books, that's totally cool. They are welcome to come along and come and join us on the fun. By the way, we have to address this. For some reason, we got word that some people thought that this was going to be some sort of like informational session for multi-level marketing or something like that. That is not what this is for. I just want to address ahead of time. It's just going to be a party in Mexico. There's going to be a slosh ball tournament and a good time to hang out and relax on the beach and talk to other book people and share some of these fun stories like we do every week. We are live Thursdays at 7 and Sundays at 4 Central. So we're right on schedule, which is exciting. And to help us prepare for that, we are working with Elevate Wellness, Seth Hood, Zane Gallagher, Joe Ignace. And this is one of our partners. And so we want to make sure we brag about these guys because right now, I don't know if you guys can tell over the last few months, but I have been getting slimmer and slimmer and in a much healthier way. I was actually having some kind of weird heart issues going into the beginning of our sponsorship with Elevate Wellness. And ever since then, it's been a really good transition into going and feeling back to my highest health. I feel pretty good. And I feel a lot more fit, and I'm excited. And a lot of it is probably all of it is in part because of Seth and Zane. So these guys are helping us get ready for looking well and swell. It's so exciting to be, meeting with them on a weekly basis. But if you guys are wanting to kind of join the movement, there's a giant movement. It's a bunch of book people and non-book people actually that they're growing like crazy. And it's because they have a really cool environment as part of their group of people who, just really want to get in the best shape of their lives, but at the same time doing it in a way that they're more focused on the kitchen stuff, more focused on the mental stuff, not just like going and lifting a bunch of weights. And so it's a great place to be as far as a community that helps you support you and keep you accountable. So give us a shout if you guys want to get in shape with Elevate Wellness. We will put you in touch with them. Cannot overhype them. It's so much fun. Big shout out to Historical Park in Bulgaria. You guys don't know about this. Rado's episode was last New Year's Eve, and they are creating a park in Bulgaria, which was at one point conquered by the Romans, the Greeks, and the Ottomans. And so they're creating a park that kind of walks you through the history of that country. It's amazing. Multi-million dollar project, like almost $1 billion, I think. And they're in phase 2 of it, and they're looking for investors. So if you have a little extra change in your wallet and you want to invest into something that's really cool that a lot of book people are involved in, please be sure to get involved with them. We can reach out and give you more information about them as you wish. Big shout out to Will Metscher. He is one of our partners as well. And they are currently looking, he's with Southwestern Consulting. Will is looking for other coaches to be involved with him to help people improve their life, improve their sales, improve their career, improve everything about what they're up to. And honestly, again, I mentioned this before on the show, but Will is the kind of person that you just want to be in your life. The accountability that he provides. Once you leave Southwestern, Alicia Huck was saying, she's like, once you leave Southwestern, there's nobody holding you accountable. There's like no PCs. Well, that's exactly what this is, but on steroids, because Will Metscher obviously is a very successful human being. And just even picking his brain for an hour, that one-on-one time that you get is a phenomenal experience. And so if you guys want to either help other people change their lives and be a Will in someone else's life, or be coached by Will, reach out to us. We can put you in touch with him. Could be a really good opportunity for you if it's the right time. And obviously, of course, we want to make sure that you feel confident in what you're doing in your life. And so what better way than to have a book guy who's a stud guiding you along the way. Gosh, love Will. Love you lots, buddy. All right. So now, guys, it's time to bring on our guest. I'm so excited for Marty Pyle to come on the show, because Marty was actually recommended by Lee McCroskey. You guys have probably heard of Lee McCroskey. But once we got done, he's like, you need to have on here. You need to have Marty Pyle. And so they go way back. Marty sold for 7 summers from 1978 to 1984. He went to the University of Kansas, who was actually playing in March Madness today. And I think they won, unfortunately for me, because I think I had him out in this round. And so that's okay, though. Marty's probably cheering them on. I don't know if he is much into basketball or not, but I guess we'll find out about him and his story. So let me bring him on to the stream. Hey, Marty.
Hey.
How's it going?
It's going well. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for being here.
It's a beautiful day here in Kansas City.
Oh, baby. That's exciting. I miss the Midwest at times. I do. I lived in Lincoln for a long time, and sometimes I miss the flatness. But then I go look outside at Mount Hood, and I'm like, nah, this is pretty cool. So again, thank you so much for being on the show. I know you've heard a couple episodes. You heard Lee's episode, and I know you guys go back and you guys still keep in touch and are good pals. And so we can talk about that as the show progresses. But as we get started here, I always like to go back to the beginning, as I'm sure you're familiar with. And so who was Marty Pyle back in 1978 before somebody came along and said, hey, what are you doing this summer? How did you get into this whole thing?
Well, appreciate you asking. Let's go back a year before that, summer of 77. I come from a large family, 8 kids. So I was the 4th of 8 kids. And the summer of 77, my 3 older brothers sold books.
Oh, nice.
So they were gone all summer. I was home with the rest of the family. And when they came back, it just sounded very exciting. They went up from Kansas City to New Hampshire and Vermont and spent the summer. And they all recommended it for me. And I was in high school at the time. So I graduated high school in 78. And the next week I was in sales school down in Nashville.
Whoa. You were a high schooler. My brother was the same way. I recruited him right out of high school. Okay. That's wild. So yeah, you have a different perspective.
Yeah, a little bit. Now, my wife also sold books out of high school. So she'll come into the story later on. But yeah.
All right. That's so cool. Oh, we love a good old love story. Bookfield love story. Heck yeah. So okay, so you were a little bit more familiar with what was going on. Maybe you had a little bit of idea of what you were going to come into, but as a high schooler, did you feel like you were ready when you got to sales school? Did you feel like it was the right time, or how do you remember that period of your life when you go from like going to high school to this crazy energy in sales school?
Okay. So in high school, for me to go to college, I would need to pay the tuition. So I needed a job that summer where I could make enough money to go to college. And I wanted to live in the dorms and all that stuff. And so pay for room and board and tuition. Now, for some reason, I felt this could happen by selling books. My brothers did not do real well, but they all recommended it. And what I knew about it is they came back with a lot of stories, and it was a huge adventure for them. And so that's what I was looking forward to, the adventure. Being a high school senior, I thought it was at least as mature as my brothers.
I mean, who's to say, right? At that point in life for kids. That's so wild. And did you get to go up to New England too?
No, I went down to, one brother came with me, my student manager, my brother Ben, and we went down to after Nashville, we went to Eastern Tennessee for the most part. Also part of Virginia, part of Kentucky, kind of that corner of the world.
Yeah, that's is that Raleigh? That's right by there in that area as well, like Virginia in the eastern, or you were further east in Knoxville, even
like near Knoxville, Bristol, Cookeville, Crossville.
That's wild. That's it's such an interesting dynamic with the fraternal, like the brotherly student manager situation, right? I mean, at least for me personally, it was hard because I wanted to push my brother as best as I could, but at the same time, I wanted, as a protectiveness, I wanted to be like, all right, you're about to go through some hard stuff. Like, how did you feel that relationship went along?
But before I answer that, so you had one brother go out with you?
Yeah. So I sold one summer and then I came back. My parents saw the growth and I was like 6 inches taller. I'm just kidding. No, but they saw like the personal growth and they go, your brother's got to go with. And I was like, got it.
And so you went back the next summer with your brother?
Yeah, we went, and it was interesting too because he graduated. So my parents started him early in school. So when he graduated, he was actually 17, and so I took a 17-year-old kid out to the book field to Massachusetts, and he was selling to 18-year-olds, like they're kids who were seniors in high school, sometimes. And it was such a interesting. I mean, he'd only been able to drive for like a year at that point. It was really strange.
Yeah, it was similar. That's interesting. So. Our relationship, it was an interesting dynamic. He it's a long story. It's a story for another time, really. But
nice.
I do remember the first week. So those give you an idea. After a week of selling, I said to my brother, I said, Ben, are you supposed to travel with me sometime? He said, yeah. I said, how? He said, when should we do it? I said, how about tomorrow? After it's supposed to be. Normally, rookies are traveled with the first week. This is the second week. I said, will you come travel with me? So he traveled with me. I remember we hitchhiked. Neither of us had a car. And I was living in La Follette, Tennessee at the time. And they no longer teach hitchhiking at sales school, do they?
No, they don't.
It was
different times.
So we tried one of the methods. I'll never forget this. I climbed up on top of his shoulders. So we're both putting our arms out at the same time. And I think the second car stopped. That's creative. They appreciate the creativity. So it worked.
That is genius. Were you ever nervous? I feel like that'd be scary trying to get in, like trying to hitchhike somewhere. I guess what did it feel like for you, this whole, because that's a whole different layer of an experience.
So you've never hitchhiked? You've not hitchhiked?
No. I mean, I stuck my leg out once to see if somebody would stop, but nobody likes hairy legs, so it didn't work.
No, hitchhiking was not any scarier than knocking on doors.
That's.
But there were times. There were times it did not go as well as you would want. They would not leave, drop you off where you wanted, or they had different plans with you. But a lot of hitchhiking.
That is bananas.
Over the decades, many people have hitchhiked to and from work every day selling books. That is not done anymore.
Yeah, I feel like it's a little different maybe now trying to do it, with the way the world has changed. You know what I mean? People
Yeah.
are a little less. I guess they're more apprehensive about that kind of stuff nowadays. I feel like than
That's probably true.
maybe
That's
they
probably
used to.
true. They should be.
But
They're smarter these days.
I just can't believe like nobody got lost or like kidnapped or something in the middle of all that. You know?
I know. I've never heard any stories of that. I'm sure it happened, with people back, but never heard those stories.
Yeah, they're no longer with us to tell them.
That's
It's like, what happened to Steve? Steve who? Move on. Go to the next door. That's so wild, man. That it's so crazy to think even just that if you just stopped, like if someone's listening to this right now that didn't sell books, even just that part, you know what I mean? To tell them, oh yeah, in college I did this job where I had to hitchhike to work to sell door to door. Like the next part is crazy enough, door to door, you know?
Yeah.
But just to say I hitchhike to work, people be like, what? Just like, are you insane? so crazy, man. Oh man. So you crazy. So the whole first summer you hitchhiked every day to work? Like, or how did you guys get around for like the whole summer? It was just that?
Well, how do walkers normally get around? How do they get around these days? People without cars on the book field.
They so my brother had to walk the first week because he locked his keys in his car. The whole different. That's the story for another time. But yeah, I mean, you usually have a manager when you have walkers. You have them go with a manager that has a car, or at least somebody in the HQ that's living with them has a car. And then part of their morning routine is that they drop them off along the way. So the way they do, so like let's say you're in Kansas City, right? So maybe you're selling in Lawrence.
Yeah.
So the kid with the car would sell outside of Lawrence, or just outside the outskirts of KC. And then the kid that walks is in Lawrence. And so your HQ is somewhere in maybe Independence. And so then you drop them off on the way. And then the person with the cargo sells in the country. And the person that doesn't have a car gets to walk all day, which is rough. But
I'm sure so people did some of that along the way, a lot of organizations. They're helpful to each other and they organize themselves that way. When I look back, and I sold books, for 7 summers, so I was in management 6 of those years. My first year, as I look back, for one thing, I moved. Ideally, you stay in one spot all summer. For different reasons, people, you'll come to a Sunday meeting and you have to move because possibly your roommate decided to go home or something. Yeah. Right? So I remember I moved 7 times my first summer.
Hey, that is insane. That's so crazy today. That's so because you had 7 people quit.
I don't know all the reasons. I don't remember because from my perspective, I was just, this is 40 years ago, over 40 years ago. So I don't know, but I assume there's a lot of people who might have not finished the summer and went home. But it was in 3 different states. I was in Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee my first summer. In those 12 weeks, I was in 7 states. So delivering books, you only allot yourself so much time to deliver the books. And we delivered them all because, walkers don't deliver during the summer. It was a stressful week.
No way. How did you get around? Did you have to like rent a truck or something or pay someone to drive you?
No. So walkers, basically, your job is to find a car by the end of the summer. Just like, yeah. That's how they do it now. Don't they still do it that way?
I think so. I don't know. Actually, I know we had walkers before, and at the end they would just rent a car from like, or a truck from U-Haul, and then they just
we always
that week.
We would find cars like we would find a place to live.
That's wild. That's so fun. So did you get to keep that car? Or did you just leave it once you were done? You're like, all right.
No, it was. I found it. A client, one of my customers loaned it to me for the week. So, yeah,
that's genius.
And my first summer, I had a car at home. It was not recommended that I even bring it. I wish I had. During that summer, I wish I had a car, but I didn't have a car.
Yeah.
I had a car in my driveway back home. But I thought it'd be less expensive of a summer if I didn't have a car.
Right.
And
No, go ahead.
I don't remember any management from, I definitely not from my brother or from our organizational leader, any communication or management before sales school. So no one no one said, do you have a car? Why don't you bring your car? All I knew is to memorize a sales talk. There was no discussions or preparation.
And your brothers, none of them were like, hey, maybe drive.
No, they weren't. No.
They were like, let him suffer.
Hey, when I hear these days what the organizational leaders and managers of Southwestern do to help prepare the students for the summer after they're recruited, it's pretty impressive. We weren't that good at it back then. At least I wasn't, and I wasn't managed that way my first summer for sure.
It's a wonder you didn't go home. Like, what kept you out there?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm not complaining about moving 7 times. I've had a chance to think back to the summer of '78, just preparing for this show, just thinking about it. So it's been good for me to think, what was I like back then? What was I doing? What was I looking forward to? And the adventure of leaving town, and going somewhere and working there 12 weeks, coming back and possibly bringing home a couple $1,000 was a huge deal. So just the adventure of getting out of town. I enjoy travel. I enjoyed travel back then, but I didn't get the chance. This is my chance to travel. So,
wow.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed meeting, folks in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia, and being in their homes and talking about books. Every day was a fun thing. I shouldn't say it. Let me take that back.
I was going to say, what? That's unique.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was I had a good summer. I came back and I was on cloud 9. My confidence was through the roof. You can probably relate to that.
I mean, I think a lot of us listening who sold, especially if you did pretty decently. I mean, you didn't even have to sell a lot of books, but just knowing that you enjoyed it and you had that experience, you feel pretty bulletproof for sure when you come back.
Well, compare it to what you would have been doing if you were back home for 12 weeks, for the summer.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I mean, I used to sell shoes at Trade Home Shoes. You ever been to Trade Home somewhere out in Kansas City? It's a Midwest shoe store.
No.
So it's a little different. It's a little different than like the average shoe store you go into, because nowadays you go into a shoe store and it's like, you just kind of look around, they just look at you, and then you say you want this one in a size 10 or whatever. They come back with a size 10, you try it on, you don't like it, you go, or you like it, you buy it. But Trade Home was very customer service oriented, so it was very much go up and talk to people, establish rapport, find a need. So I kind of had some familiarity. And then when you come out with multiple shoes, so you get used to showing everything, get used to demoing. So I was comfortable with all that stuff. But thinking back, I'm like, if I would have gone back home for another summer selling shoes, like I would have learned. I mean, everything that I know now stems, I can trace it back. It's and I've built on top of it since. But if you trace it back, it was from something I learned even my first summer, let alone the other 3, right? So no, I can't imagine where I would be, if I hadn't sold books. Just such a strange thought. And you got married out of it, so like I can't even imagine what it's like for you. That's wild. Did you know you wanted to come back? You knew you wanted to come back right away. Then it sounds like you're like, yep, I gotta get dose number 2 of this.
Yeah, I think I wanted to come back after my first summer, and I think I recruited a couple people. My first 3 years in college were not at KU. I did graduate from KU, but I started at this little Catholic college in Kansas City, Avila University. And so I studied art there. Then I transferred to KU after my junior year. No, after my sophomore year. So 2 years at Avila, and then I graduated from KU.
That's awesome. But you probably went into college just feeling great. I mean, it was your ability to schedule for school and stuff must have been through the roof. I mean, what did it feel like going into college as a freshman, even at Avila with all this experience?
Well, Avila, one thing about Avila was there was 3 girls to every guy. So the ratio was very good as far as, and I lived about a mile from the school, or about 2 miles from the school, but I lived in the dorm anyway. I just wanted the college life, and I have no regrets. It was a blast, and one thing I learned my first summer, and I studied art, so half my classes were, painting or drawing or designing. Well, one thing I learned my first summer is that I had more control of my, I had more control of being able to get into the mood to do artwork than before when I sold books. I realized I had more control over how much time of my time, my goals, and so it was very good going into college doing that, having sold books.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
that's the one thing I imagine, like, what would have college been like for me if I had that before instead of after? That's such a blessing, I feel like, to get as early as you can get that,
Yeah.
to do it. It's so cool.
So you did it after which year of school? You were in,
It was after my freshman year. So I graduated high school in 11, and I went and I got to college. I needed Southwestern pretty badly. I wasn't good at interpreting the skills that I learned in Southwestern into my school life. So I graduated high school. I had a really good grade, point average and all that stuff. So when
yeah.
I got to college, I didn't know how to study. I had never learned, because in high school I never had to. Never. I don't think I studied for a test. Oftentimes what would happen is we would have like study groups, and I would be leading the study groups in high school for my
In high
friends because
school.
I knew what was going on. When I got to college, I was like, oh, you have to. And even like after the first semester, I still got a good decent GPA without studying. And then I got into my second semester when all the classes start getting harder,
Yeah.
and it was a crash and burn. So then I went and sold books, and I thought, great, now I have all these skills to apply to my college career as a sophomore. And I did not. I didn't really struggle much my first summer, and so I thought that every summer was going to be that way.
Yeah.
And I did well, so I was a little inflated. A little. I was very inflated, and so it just was. It just didn't. It was. I actually wish I had struggled hard. Like, I wish I would have had a harder summer, because I sold, like, I was in the top 10 first years. I was in front of the pace setter. Like, everything went well, and again, that's good because I worked hard for it. It was not like I breezed through it either. Like, it was hard, but it didn't do any good for me back when I crashed back down to earth after the summer was over, right? And so I came back and I was inflated. I was confident, but I was overconfident because school isn't the book field. So if I could get through the book field, then school is going to be a breeze. And then that semester again, crash and burn. And it was hard. It was hard on that side. So it was interesting, that dynamic for me. It wasn't until later that I was like, oh, I have to apply that.
The book field, you're in a very conducive environment to be successful.
Yes.
Right. Because you're with roommates who are doing the same job, and
Yes.
you're all committed to each other, kind of like a band of brothers, and everybody's working 13 hours a day. If they're on schedule, which is what you want, and usually that's the situation. And then you come back to school, and you're only going to class, 12 hours a week, and it's a whole different deal.
Yeah, and your roommate isn't in the same major. And there's no like student manager that you're reporting stats to on a daily basis where it's like, I got 30 demos today, or, I got all my homework done today. Like, nobody's. And so it was hard to make that transition. Also, like, it didn't help that because on the other hand, I mean, I gained all these skills that it was tangible. Like when you sell books, especially after your first summer, I think more than any other summer, but maybe that's just personal, but it's so to you so tangible how much you've grown. Like it's almost like when you measure like, or like my puppy's grown right now and I can measure, oh, he's 32 pounds. When I got him, he was 12 pounds. I can measure the growth.
Yeah.
It was the same way. Like you could almost feel it within yourself. And so socially, I was doing great. I mean, I was making friends really well in college. I was making really good connections. I learned how to network really well. But as far as like the actual discipline of studying and academics, I was not good at that part. That's why it took me like 7 years to graduate. I went a couple victory laps.
Okay.
Before I was able to do it. But it was I don't think I'd take it back at all. Like I think that's what needed to happen for me to learn, right? To apply these things that I had learned that I was kind of naturally good at to things that I was not good at, and still realize, hey, I can still use effort to get through things that I'm not good at. And I had never not been good at school. It was such a weird dynamic. It was strange. But
so you grew up in high school. You went to high school in Nebraska, right?
Yeah, Grand Island.
Grand Island, okay. I've never been there.
Like, you're not missing out. It's not grand and it's not an island. It's it's not a lot. And we moved there. I moved there as a kid, and so that's kind of just where I grew up.
Did you go to UNL?
Yep, I was a Husker.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I graduated. Eventually, when I did, I graduated with economics and math.
Okay.
And I chose those because math I'd always been good at. That's just kind of when I first moved here, I didn't speak any English. So any English class, reading classes, it was hard. But math was the only place I felt not dumb.
Okay.
As an immigrant. Because I don't need to know what she's saying. I can read a 2 and I can read a plus sign and I can read a 2 and I can read an equal sign, and that's 4. I know that,
I know my numbers.
It made sense. Yeah. I can count these are all the same, and 1, 2, 3. And now I do the math in my head in Spanish, but so that was literally the only thing that like I was hanging on to, that I felt like not way outcast by, and every other class I'm like, I'm lost here. So I just kind of naturally had this brain for math. And so when I got to college, I started as a music major, then I switched to like biology, and that was not good because biology was a lot of reading.
Yeah.
And then eventually when I landed in math and economics, I was like, math and kind of business. Yes. And so that's
so what
that was
did you say second grade or fourth grade when you moved to America?
It was second grade. It was I was 7. Yeah. We moved here because my family was going to get murdered.
Okay.
And
that's mentioned in your book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chapter 4 through 6. Yeah. In there. Yeah.
Okay. So when you came to America, you're in second grade, you're going to a public school. Is that right?
Yeah.
In Grand Island?
Mm-hmm.
And you said, this is no Grand Island?
Yeah, no, it was crazy. I mentioned this in the book, but I've never really I've told some of this story, but nobody has really ever asked, but like my expectations were we were going to Disney. So when we moved here, my parents were like, we're going to Disney. That's what we're going to the United States for. And I knew that because, you watch Disney as a kid, especially when you're from another country and you see Disney, you're like, this is magical. Like, what? And we went to Grand Island, one of the 3 states that's furthest from both Disneys, like nowhere close. Like not even like a state away. Only North Dakota and South Dakota are further, like to either way, right? And so but my parents were honest. I mean, I also knew why we were here. My brother, so the brother that came and sold with me, Danny, he was 4, and my parents were very honest with us, and they would always say, we're going because some bad guys want to hurt us, and we need to leave. I don't know when we're coming back. I remember my dad and I write a little bit about this in the book, and obviously greater detail. And when they told us it's going to be hard, we're not going to have the same things. And there was things that I remember that were different. Like, for example, I didn't have to wear uniform to school. I thought that was really strange because in Colombia, we went to a private school and it was private Catholic school. So I had uniforms and I loved uniforms. I'm like, I look so sharp. And I always like dressing up and looking nice even as a little kid. And when we get here, we have no money. We bought our clothes from a garage sale that was like 2 doors down from the house that we moved into. That was just this tiny little shack almost. And, I'm wearing clothes. And for the first time in my life going to school, I don't have any feeling of belonging, why, besides the color of my skin, besides the clothes I'm wearing, besides the language, right? Just in general, like all together, no family. And so yeah, but eventually when we became citizens, we go to Disney. Like the year we became citizens, we finally go to Disney.
You did.
And yeah. And in the book, I'm like, yeah, my parents never lied to me. They held up their end of the bargain and we went to Disney and we made it.
Very good. Very cool. So when you came to America, were you sponsored by a family or
Nothing.
a church?
Nothing. We moved to Nebraska because we needed to run away to get away from everything. The only connection that we had to the States in any way, shape, or form was we had family in Miami. The reason that got connected to Nebraska was because it was my mom's great grand uncle or great grand uncle. So like a very distant family member, and their kid had gone a few years earlier, had gone to school in Kearney, Nebraska, the University of Nebraska at Kearney. Yeah. And so they're the only connection we had in the United States. And when we asked them, hey, where can we go where there are no Colombians or no hard country? Because when you're trying to run away from the FARC, which at the time had become the cartel, you got to get away from any connection that they have. So you can't just go to like Orlando where there's, it's like there's neighborhoods called Little Colombia, you know what I'm saying? Where you can just, because especially at the time in the late 90s and early 2000s, the drug trade was still in full swing. And so, any connection that could still be found to you can't do that. And so they're like, well, Fabio, he went to school in this place called Nebraska. We were like, well, they'll take it. That'll be good for us because there's nobody here. There's no, I think total when we first arrived, it took us a while to find them, but I think there was a total of like 30 Colombians in the whole state.
Is that right?
I think so. I mean, as far as we knew, at least in the general area of Grand Island anyway, but
did your father or mother speak English?
Nothing.
Okay. So, wow. So they had no job prospects necessarily in Kearney, but they just had the confidence that, or, faith that this is going to work out and it's safe for them to be killed.
Yeah. Being alive is better than, is a start, right? So as long as we're alive, we can figure something out. And so then my dad came first. My dad came March 7th of 2000 and he came, and this is in the book in detail, but he had a connection through Fabio, who had a friend that lived in Grand Island. He stayed in this house, shared it with like 27 other men. And, he figured out that you could get work. We came as tourists. So we got the visas to get in here. It was as tourists, but when you get a tourist visa, you're allowed to stay 6 months.
Okay.
And so we bought a one-way ticket.
Yeah.
I almost named the book a one-way ticket on a tourist visa, but I didn't think that was like quite as clear as to what I was going for. And so, so we moved and yeah, it was crazy. I mean, he came and he found out he could work at a meatpacking plant nearby, and they don't, there's ways to get work without having to have proof of documentation. And especially in Nebraska, where it's a farm state, agricultural state. And so he did that. It was just saved money. And right before we came 4 months later, by then he had this little house rented. And I mean, that's where we came and we started. I mean, it was just very no help, no nothing. Even the family in Miami didn't. Here's how much not help, and this is not to their fault. We should have asked for help. We didn't know what we didn't know. But like, for example, we landed in Miami and then we took a bus from Miami all the way to Memphis, where my dad met us, and then drove us the rest of the way. We didn't know that you could fly into Omaha. We had no idea.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
It wasn't until much later that you're like, wait, there's an airport in Omaha. We can fly there. And then like as families started coming and visiting, like we found that out. But nobody told us. Like, so like we just on a Greyhound, just following along and hoping that we were going in the right direction and trying to listen
Oh, yeah.
to announcements and stuff. We had no idea. It was a whole as I mean, we can cuss on the show, but it was a whole shit show, really, the whole way. And but you know, I look back on that and it's like it had to happen that way, you know, just because that's just the story we got dealt. You
It's
know,
a
some people
significant
have,
part of. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
great.
and you know, some people have harder. You know, everybody's gone through the hardest thing that they've ever been through. So relatively, people are like, oh, that's hard. But yeah, but then there's people who've had it harder, like much.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like unimaginably harder, right? And there's people who've had it quote unquote easier. But can you even quantify that? Can you really go up to someone and be like, oh, your story is easier or harder? No, it's just that's just
No,
what happened to me, you know. And all that had to happen so I could end up here on March 27th talking to you on Zoom or
that's
on, you know,
right. We'll
and it's
probably go
cool.
six hours is my goal.
Record
Hey,
breaking.
no, I'm joking. The book. How do people get a hold of the book if they want a copy?
Well, thank you for asking. I'll get you the $20 for interviewing me later. This is supposed to be our conversation, so I'm glad you're asking. Thank you. Yeah, I'm at Amazon. Amazon.com. You can Google the cost of citizenship, and it'll show up on there. It'll get to you in 2 days. If you want a signed copy, you can message me, and I can sign it and I'll mail it to you. It's $20 if you to get a signed copy, just so I can pay for the shipping for all, because I have a ton of them. So
Okay.
like just to kind of cover that cost. Otherwise, you can go order it on Amazon. I think it's $13.99 on Amazon. Either way helps me, because if you order it on Amazon, you can leave a review that's verified purchase, and so that way that helps a ton. And
Mhm.
if you order it author copy, then you can get it signed. So either way, it works. Whoever,
Okay,
if you're
great.
listening and you want to learn, oh, I'll send you a copy, Marty. Don't worry. Don't you worry. Don't you
Hey,
worry.
congratulations! Congratulations on the book, by the way. That's fantastic.
Thanks. It was a process. It was honestly the most This was the hardest thing I've ever done. I
It
mean,
was.
selling books is a close second, but this, from an emotional standpoint, whoa, man, it was. I did it in 2 months, so it was like kind of the same. It took me like a total of like 8.5 or 9 weeks ish from blank page to hit publish. It was like 8 weeks, 8.5 weeks, 9. But from an emotional standpoint, it was more intense, because the fear of knocking on a door you could overcome by saying, "Screw it, what's the worst I can say? No, all right." So then you go to like, it's easier to walk yourself through that. But there was parts of the book that are my life. I mean, all of it's my life, but there were certain aspects of it that I was approaching that I knew how they ended, and
Mhm.
so having to face them again was hard. That took it's a like really big commitment to finishing. That There's like chapters in there that talk about the passing of family members that we didn't get to say
Yeah.
goodbye to. There's things in there that you know I hadn't touched in a while, or like kind of it was kind of like therapy, you know, in the
I
same way
bet.
that therapy can be scary after trauma. You have to relive it to just kind of face it and move forward.
Mhm.
Some of those things were buried, and I didn't know. You know, I
Yeah.
knew, but I didn't. You know, and so then when it, it's also scary from the other hand, because when you write like a post on Facebook or an article, it's like, all right, here's kind of a thought I have, and it's on Facebook, so who cares, right? Or even if you have a blog, it's like, here's a blurb.
Right.
But when you write a book, it's like, hey, I care. This is important. This is near and dear to my heart. To get the words out, you have to dig deeper than just like a brief, 500 words. This is 50,000 words. Like, to get 50,000 words, there's thoughts in there that you have to dig deeper than you'd ever thought to dig. And so it's kind of like putting your heart out there. It's very exposing. And so the other side of it was, man, what if people don't like it? What if it's bad? What if I'm not a good writer? It's my second language, so what the hell? Like, what if it sucks?
Mhm.
And then so that's pride in the way too. So mix that in, and then um, just the time commitment of writing a book while still having like a job and trying to like live, and
Yeah.
so
Oh,
it was
yeah.
hard. It was hard. It was hard across I mean, I was late nights physically, mentally you're like engaged and try to like maintain there was nights where I was up late trying to finish or like do this or do that and then hoping everything came together. And so, but it worked. It just worked. What I did do is I applied the principles that I had learned in Southwestern to do this and it
Very
worked.
good.
Yes, sir. Gosh, that's a lot more than I talked about this, I think, on the show.
Well, I've heard you talk that you had a book. I've never heard you explain how to get it or, much what's in it. So that's thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I with the podcast, it's a fine line because I never wanted to be a thing about it's about me. You know what I mean? I never wanted to feel for people who are listening that it's about, because it's not about me. It's about the guests. It's about you. And
Right.
And I feel like it's unfair. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's unethical for me to be like, yeah, go buy my book. Let me use this platform.
Well, I don't. Yeah.
These eyeballs. You know what I mean? I don't know. It feels weird. Not unethical. I don't know, but it just feels odd for me to be like, yeah, please go buy my book. Now that I have this platform. Nah, I don't. It feels. I mean, thank you for asking, and so I don't mind sharing if you ask, but that's good for me. But it's nice to share. But it's nice to talk about and to have someone ask.
Yeah, and I think you should mention each episode how to get your book. I really do.
Okay.
So you might read one of the reviews. Just read a review and say, hey, here's how you get it. It's on Amazon, or you can get a signed copy.
Yeah. It's fun. It's a fun. It's cool. More are coming though. So I will announce that when, because there's like this ends at a certain point, and then things have happened since that that are like need to be shared as well since. But
Good. Very good.
More to come. Yeah, I just wanted to be sure that my parents were remembered is more than anything, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure their story's a great story. Very successful.
It was great
story.
Yeah. And like growing up, I'd ask my Mexican, because there's a lot of Mexicans in Nebraska, because again, it's a really good place to land if you're trying to work somewhere, right? And so a lot of immigrants in Nebraska, and I would ask some of my Mexican friends whose either parents or their grandparents were the ones that immigrated.
Yeah.
And you could say, hey, so how'd your grandpa get here? Like, what's your story? And they're like, I don't know. And in my head, I said, no way. What? Like, I know what they went through, or, like you guys know what they went through. You don't remember that. You don't. And so I remember thinking in my head, like, I don't care if anybody reads this book or anybody buys it, but my grandkids and their kids and their kids, when they get asked how their family ended up wherever, I wanted to be documented, because there's no way I witnessed that happen with my parents for them to not be like celebrated in a way that is meaningful, right? And so that's really what the why was behind the whole book, was just like when I didn't want to keep going or whatever, I was like, hey, it's about them and making sure that they're celebrated, because I don't think they're going to write a book, and it's worth telling the story. So anyway,
very good.
Yes, sir. Anyway, sorry, back to Southwestern. Sorry, everybody, for that big tangent.
Back to me.
Yeah, Marty, back to you.
I have a couple notes on other things about my first summer that I think might be unique.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how did that summer? I always like hearing about the first summer. So let's hear these notes. I love this.
Okay, the hitch and the rides. Already mentioned that. And I grew up, in Kansas City. So in the city, had never really been to the country or any small towns. So spending all summer in real small towns, I thoroughly enjoyed that. So it really was fun. The Southern hospitality, I experienced all that for the first time. I also enjoyed sales school. Sales school kind of blew my mind. All these very successful, I think they were all men, basically, my first summer. The leaders, the managers, great speeches. Mort Utley, Spencer Hayes, all the people covering the parts of sales school. It kind of blew my mind. But when I went out and sold, I didn't really believe this 75 to 80 hours a week stuff. I didn't think people really did it. All summer, I didn't believe people actually did it.
Did you?
My schedule was pretty good. I don't remember getting off schedule much, but it wasn't until this is true. Okay, let me start with a story that took place about a year ago. Okay.
Yeah.
It has to do with my first summer. So a year ago, I was at the dermatologist's office, and my dermatologist is a young lady just out of school. She's about 30, and her last name is Horner. She's Dr. Horner, and she's cutting a growth off my back. I'm laying there, and so we're talking. So I'm on the table for about 20 minutes. And we're talking. It was nothing major, nothing serious. I said, Dr. Horner, back when I was in college, I knew a student in college, and he was studying to become a dentist. His last name was Horner. Now we're in Kansas City, and she said, "Yeah, my uncle, his name's Kevin Horner. He's a dentist. He's up in South Dakota, and we're in Kansas City again." I said, "Yeah, Kevin Horner. I lived with him in Eastern Tennessee back in 1978 for about 3 weeks." And so, so my first summer, I moved in with a manager for the first time the last 3 weeks of the summer. So I've been, this first time I was with the manager. It was Kevin Horner, and Kevin Horner was on this great schedule, had this great attitude, and that's where I really bought into all the principles of Southwestern. Really, that's where it started. That last 3 weeks of my first summer. For whatever reason, I didn't experience that.
Wow.
With any of my roommates through the summer, but living with Kevin for those 3 weeks. So
that's why again, honestly, you hear about that now and you think back on a first year. Most first years that experience what you experienced would have quit. It's a wonder that they stuck around. My experience, we never had a first year who moved 7 times and didn't really get a good follow day that did the whole summer. I mean, those are the ones that quit in my experience. But that's so. Did you connect with, like, what did she say when you found out that there was this connection? Like, what did you explain?
Yeah, I explained it to her. She wasn't that impressed. I thought it was wild because it was 40 years ago, 3 weeks. So I found him on Facebook, sent him a message. I DM'd him, told him the story, and he thanked me because I gave him a lot of credit, but he did not remember me.
No!
It was just a manager living with a rookie, for a couple of weeks. So but he had a great effect on me. He never preached to me. It was just by watching him work. He just had a good work schedule, and a good attitude, and so I benefited greatly from that. So that's one thing I want to mention.
That's cool. I love that. Hey, do you know Kevin happens to be the same Kevin? The odds of that.
Okay, so that was my first summer. Came home, brought home about $3,000. So $3,000. So
what is that? What is that in today's dollars? See, $1978 to 2022. Because that's significant. That's $3,000. I mean, especially for school back then.
Yeah.
I mean, you were able to pay for school for sure.
Yeah. Tuition was probably $2,500 or something.
That was $13,000 today, which is not enough for tuition. Yeah, that's barely enough for tuition for a semester now.
Yeah, but college has gone up quite a bit since then.
And the units has
terrible.
Not.
It's terrible.
So then, how did you decide you wanted to come back, and what did you do different that second summer? Did you bring a car at least? Did you keep hitchhiking?
Yeah. So, okay, my manager was a guy named Kirk Hall. He was the organizational leader the first summer, and he became my manager. Because my brother didn't come back my second summer, so Kirk Hall was my manager, and he at one time held the company record. So his name's Kirk Hall, Hall. Also from South Dakota, I believe. But I was able to work with him one day, my second summer, and he was a fantastic salesperson. I learned a lot from him. But I was down in Louisiana my second summer.
Oof. Oh, that's hot.
Do you ever sell down there?
No, thank the Lord. I only sold in New England, so it was decently cool. I mean, I had a different. It was like sometimes it snowed at the beginning of the summer. I had that instead, but I had friends who were in the same organization as I did that instead of going north, they went south, and I've heard some brutal stories of the heat.
Oh yeah,
and humidity. I mean, you could drink water you could breathe. Never thirsty. You could just breathe water. That's what I heard.
Now Portland has no humidity, I don't think, but Kansas City's pretty humid. But Louisiana is extremely humid. It'd be like being in Florida in the summer.
That's so brutal. Brutal. How did that go? Did you see growth, and what do you remember of that summer?
Okay, so that summer, I think I brought home, I think it was $12,000. So it was a good summer.
Hey, that's pretty good.
I had a car. I enjoyed that. I'll tell you our product line back then, my second summer. So it was 1979. We had the volume library, and we had a reading program for kids. So we had that was our two products. I didn't like the reading program. I didn't believe in the reading program. I didn't like the photographs used in the reading program. They were dated. They were like from the 50s. It was just a product that had not been updated in a lot of years. And so I didn't sell any. I didn't carry it with me. I just carried the prospectus for the volume library all summer. I had one product. And it was probably the hardest, it's harder to sell the volume library compared to the reading program. Possibly, I don't know. But I believed in the volume library, and I only sold the volume library. And no backpack, no book box, just a pre-approach pad and a little book.
That's
so
epic.
I only called on families with, I think, 4th graders up to 10th graders. That's it.
Man. And you still sold a lot. I mean, that's what, $46,000 in today's dollars?
Yeah.
That's
in today's dollars income?
Yeah, 1979, about 49,000, I think, if you take, because it was 13, give or take. Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's an increase.
Yeah.
And you left money out on the table because anybody who had anything younger than a 4th grader.
I know. I know.
Oh,
so after that summer, so after that summer, my manager, Kirk Hall, suggested I transfer to KU and go to KU where they had other selling students, student managers were there. Lee McCroskey was there. And so I transferred to KU. I transferred to KU not because of their art program, but because of Southwestern. It was a better recruiting place. So I wanted to recruit. I just, brought home 12 grand. Now I wanted to get into management more. And so I transferred to KU.
Wow. What was it like meeting Lee for the first time?
I don't remember really. I mean, he was, I think he started selling books the year before me. So he was a teacher at the time. He was in grad school, taught at KU. And so he was a couple years older. Actually, 2 years. We were born the same week of September. He's 2 years older than me exactly, almost. And so he was more mature. And he is the funniest person I've ever known in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's
late, man. Like
he's sharp and he's funny. He really is.
Just a goober. He's a funny dude. Such a funny. I don't even know how to describe Lee. Like, just such a funny guy. But that must have really broke some belief barriers going into a group of people who, I guess maybe for the first time that all were really in this common goal of bringing out a big team and having this growth mentality. You think that affected you? How'd that affect you into your third summer?
I think so. I actually recruited a 20-man team.
Legendary.
Yeah. So that's not
That's
as
a wall
common.
of greats.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
So
That's legend.
so at KU, those 3 years that I was there, I recruited two 20-man teams and a 17-man team, I think. So uh, I was motivated, to recruit a large team. And back then, they paid managers. I think the way management is paid now, you earn a percent of how your students that you recruited do. You get a percent of that, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the better the numbers change with the size of your organization.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's based on how many people are in your organization. It's more based on wholesale. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right?
From at least when I was in, I don't know unless they've changed things very, very recently. From what I understand, it's you take like a percentage of, they count up the units, like total production.
Yeah.
Not in dollars, but in units. And then you, depending on like the number of like threshold that team crosses, then your percentage fluctuates. And so, the more the merrier for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So back when I was around, recruiting, the more you brought out, the higher that percentage went.
Oh, in numbers, like number of people, bodies.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
So 20, you maxed out at 20. You got, so it was.
I see.
It was, So
yeah.
Unfortunately, that was where my motivation was. Numbers.
Ooh, I feel like there was a lesson learned there. I feel like there's like a lesson.
Oh yeah, I wasn't the manager I could have been with a different focus.
Right.
It just wasn't part of the culture. For example, parent visits. I don't think I ever made a parent visit. I don't know if any of the managers back then did. I remember it being discussed at meetings, but never did that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was just, come on, see you in Nashville.
Well, there were some meetings. You would recruit them. You try to recruit good folks, who you felt would do well, and you had some meetings beforehand. With Lee would be there and the other managers, and we would cover what to expect. The closer you got to the summer, you talked about dogs and some of the scarier stuff, things that might happen. So the one step, if I were to go back, it'd be parent visits.
Yeah. And for people who are listening who didn't sell books, who don't know what parent visits are, typically speaking, when you recruit nowadays, it's almost like mandatory. But when you recruit somebody, one of the first things you do right after they commit to coming out for the summer is you schedule a point in time to go meet with their parents and introduce yourself, obviously talk about what the summer is going to be like, but really just to kind of put them at ease. And the goal of that meeting is to get on the same page as to what's about to happen if the kid decides he or she wants to quit and go home. So essentially it's like, listen, there's going to be a point in time when they're going to call you and they're going to say, I'm coming home, and you can decide what to tell them, but it's very much in their favor to say, hey, no, stay out there. You committed to this. And it really helps create that communication and that bond between the manager and the parent to know that the kid, the student is in good hands with them being out there. And so it's a very vital part of the recruiting process nowadays. It's almost like, in fact, not doing a parent visit after you recruit someone is almost a very high indicator that they're going to probably end up coming home. Because there's always like a point in time in the summer where you're like, what the heck am I doing out here?
Yeah.
And so that's what it helps with. That's what it helps for sure. So dang. And then you guys didn't even do them. That's wild. That's wild. It sounds so weird.
It's an exaggeration that we didn't do them, but I remember if I would use any excuse not to do them. If someone lived 4 hours away, I didn't want to drive 4 hours to meet their parents,
Yeah. And it's understandable because it takes, usually they're done on Saturdays. And so it's like, who the heck wants to spend the whole Saturday, on a 8-hour round trip for sure. But you have to, that's part of the job, that's so weird to think about that. But it makes sense though too, because back then, like, I feel like I mean, nowadays part of the reason why you have to do it is because if you Google Southwestern, it's not favorable. It's kind of like Jesus
Well,
and
no,
Walmart,
I've
right?
seen
You'll
that.
get like you'll get some positive stuff and you'll get some negative stuff, and so parents get pretty worried about it. I will say though, like in my experience, there were times where the question wasn't whether Southwestern was legit or not. Sometimes the
Mhm.
question was whether they thought that their kid could do well at it. And it was sometimes heartbreaking to see like a parent indirectly or sometimes directly tell their student in front of you. Because usually you go with the student, right? So it's like I recruited
Yeah,
Steve, and then you go with Steve to see Mr. and Mrs. Steve's parents, right? And so
right.
um, sometimes, it wasn't often, but sometimes they would look at the kid and be like, I just don't think they're gonna do well. And to watch, like that dynamic was rough. Like, because you're like, gosh, you just told your kid you don't believe in them. Like all their life, you were telling them you can do anything, and now they want to go do something important, or like at least to them, and you're like, nah, you can't do that thing. Anything but that. It's a weird dynamic, because then you're like, hey man, you're 18, you can do whatever you want, and so
Mhm.
sometimes the
I
kids
bet.
go, screw it, I'm doing it anyway. But it was, and sometimes you see some really cool parents, they're like, yes, this is amazing, like, good, and go. If Andre says to do it, then do it. You're like, all right, that you're a good parent. Oh yeah, for sure. So that was but your summer at KU, it sounds like it was a really impactful summer. That after you, like, I feel like it sounds like there was like a shift, or am I reading that wrong? It sounds
So
like there
you
was
are
like
you
a
saying
in
my
your career, like in your career out of the 7 summers. Do you think that was a significant moment, or like, because I feel like
moving to
if yeah, going to KU must have changed like the way you approached the whole summer, even probably.
Oh yeah. Okay. So the advantage of going to KU was Lee was there. Gary Olschlager. Do you recognize that name? Gary O.
Oh, I feel like I've heard of Gary O through a couple of people. Why do I? No, I just
He
to not
sold.
look weird.
He sold in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So he sold for 11 years. So he's been around a while.
Legend.
Yep. And he's a really good buddy and roommate. And my best man actually at my wedding was Gary Olschlager. And the first thing he did to help me, so we were really good friends, was he convinced me the reading program was a good quality product. So
Yes.
my third summer, you add the knowledge. Now you have another product. That I believed in two products now, and we went back to Louisiana. I sold in Louisiana 5 years in a row, 5 summers in a row. So
Brutal.
it's humid. I'll tell you what. If I were to list my top memories of my summers down there, the humidity was not an issue at all. I do remember knocking on doors at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was just, sweat was pouring down my brow already, you know. So
Yeah,
that's early
that's
in the
just
morning.
inevitable.
Yeah.
You wake up with that. It's like part of like the.
But Louisiana, so my first summer was kind of in the northern part of the state, but the other 4 summers I was in southern Louisiana, which is kind of the Cajun area, a very, very, very unique part of the United States. And I
I've
thoroughly
heard.
enjoyed the next 4 summers in the Cajun part of Louisiana.
That is
We
so.
had
I
a
have questions about this. I have a lot of questions about this, but go on. Sorry.
we had a family friend who passed away in the last 6 months, who housed my wife and her sister selling books back in 1980. So she's been a family friend from Houma, Louisiana. Maudry Bergeron. She's been a family friend for 40 years, since 1980. Great lady, great people,
So
great people.
awesome.
I knocked on
Sorry to hear
doors.
about your loss, but that's so cool to
Yeah.
hear that connection was there.
And French is the first language for a lot of the grandparents down there. Kids today
Yeah.
are, your age or my age even, might not know French very well, but their parents, my parents' age, would definitely know French. I knocked on doors of people who were born in America who knew no English. It was that kind of backwoods. It was fun. It was fun. And the food was great. The people were great. And in many ways, I loved the people there. So it was great. It was a great summer. Everybody, now imagine this when you're selling books in Louisiana. For me, my experience was people don't, in the parishes, their counties there, they call them parishes, like the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
So they're not counties, they're parishes. What was I just getting ready to say? It was going to be very good.
We're talking about the food, Cajun food.
Yeah. Food is fantastic.
Picture this.
For sure. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to ask because so I've been to New Orleans, which is, the only experience I've had of Louisiana. We had crawfish boil. But I do remember my summers, sometimes you'd have families who were really, really cool and they would invite you in to eat, or they'd invite you at the end of the summer to like come and like hang out with them because you just connected with them in a special way. Yeah. So I can't imagine how awesome it must have been to sometimes have run into some of those families and they were like, hey, when you come back with my books, we're going to have a whole crawfish boil or whatever. Like that Southern hospitality added to that. It must have been just a blast to just make connections like that.
And you would knock on doors and, in some cases, like my dog's out the window digging into my garden there. Wait a second. No, but in Louisiana, my experience was people from those parishes, those small towns, which is where I usually work, small towns, they were from there. People didn't move in to those parishes. You don't move to the central middle part of Nebraska. People in those counties out in western Nebraska, for example, for the most part, they grew up there.
Yeah, they've been there for years. Yeah.
In southern Louisiana, they had been there for generations. So one thing we would do is, when you name sell books, you get, name, is that correct?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we would go as deep as when we ask them, when we're getting, you sell a product to somebody, or in the conversation, I would ask what their maiden name was, what the mom's maiden name was.
That's so smart.
I would keep track of that. So now it would double the names. So you would meet somebody,
Absolutely.
you might meet someone, a week later with the same last name, and you knock on the door, you're able to say, are you related to somebody, their sister who's been married for 10 years, different name.
That whole other half. Yeah, that's actually genius for today. Like if I was a book kid listening to this right now, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to write that down. That's a genius thing to do.
If it's a community where they know each other, yeah.
Yeah, because so I sold in upstate New York, and it was like same idea. Because some of those families, because that's kind of where the colonies, you know what I mean, like New York, upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, like some of those families were like around for decades and sometimes centuries. Like my great grandpa fought in the North for the North in the Civil War. And you're like, I believe that because
that's great.
We're in Massachusetts, and so that makes sense. That's such a genius idea, and especially those small towns like that. Oh yeah. And
just a hint on doing that would be to just indirectly ask. I've been meeting a lot of Boudreaux around here. Were you a Boudreaux before you got married? No, I was a. They should tell you. That's how you find out.
Kids, write that down. If you're listening and you're going in yours, write that down. It's advanced sales with Marty Pyle. Is what we're doing here. That's so smart, and it's kind of fun. Did you? I experienced this, but did you experience this where you would become kind of a part of the community in a way? Like people, I don't know. After a while, when people realize, especially if you built really good PR through the names and you really got to know the community really well, that you kind of became kind of like the milkman, you know what I mean? Or like the post office person, like, it's this person works at the post office. This is the person that delivers milk, and this is the book guy. And so people would share stuff with you about the community that then you would kind of be in the know. And so sometimes you'd be at homes and, you're like, oh, did you hear that the schools, everybody's like right now, the bond issue for the school expansion is really important. And so that was like the hot topic
Oh
of the
yeah.
town, and you got to really intermix and interwoven with that community. And then when you would bring it up to families and talk about it with those names and with that like knowledge, it just became this, you became your town. You kind of like connected it in a weird way. Did you experience that much probably
Yeah.
in Louisiana with that?
Somewhat. Yeah.
Oh, such a cool feeling. Golly. And so now, wait, hold on a sec. So you're selling volume libraries and the kids' books. I mean, you must have blown up that third summer.
And now we had cookbooks too, I think. I think they still have the same cookbook, I believe. I don't know.
What? 1 second. They, in fact, do.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful book.
The Illustrated Encyclopedia of American Cooking.
What do they sell that for now?
I think this is $32, at least when I was selling, which is in 2016.
I think it was $26 back in 70 or in 1980. It hasn't gone up that much.
That means that
price up on that.
That means it was expensive back then.
I guess.
But I don't know if it can, after the internet, if they can go up too much. But just so you know, there's more than 5,000 of the best recipes from the editor's favorite recipes. And we're not sponsored by Southwestern. This is not me selling it. I just kept it because I thought it'd be hilarious. But this is gold. I mean, this is when you ran into a grandma that you had bad pre-approach on. Like,
good book. Yeah.
A couple of units, 3 units right here. Boom. I'll take the $4 or whatever it was. That's so awesome. Selling in Louisiana sounds like it was hard, but once you kind of got past the physical aspect, which you always kind of did, it felt like a pretty, I mean, I'm not trying to say, and this is in no offense to Louisiana, but I feel like if people need help with education in any state in America, Louisiana may be towards the top of that list.
Yeah, their education system back then, probably still now, is in the bottom 2 or 3 states.
Yeah, not ideal. So they need you the most there.
Yeah, good place to go.
So 5 summers out there. That's what are your, in your opinion, like for people who are trying to adjust to going into a new state and learning, like, because the culture shock must have been, I mean, you're already talking about it, like the language, right? And like people,
yeah.
But how did you best adapt to it? How did you find yourself easily being part of like the like to be able to adjust to that culture shock? What did you learn about that as far as like, this is how I adapt as fast as possible?
Oh, I would say you don't really have time to adapt. You get a place to live and you go knock on doors the next day, right? So I would say, and having to, 7 summers and having to move sometimes during the summers, I've had to start new territories a lot. The first thing I would say is become very interested in their school system and their community. Just be genuinely interested in their community. That helps a lot. And in each of the houses that you're in, be tuned in, to what's going on, and well.
That's so good. That's so good. And I'm glad that you mentioned that. One of the things, so when I started selling, I think Matt Atchison, he ended up selling, I mean, he was one of the better people that ever did this, but one of the things he always recommended is, he goes, normally, we recommend going and getting your 30 demos right off the bat, like get onto that habit. But you have permission, like the first, like 2 goal periods of the first day, to stay longer than 20 minutes. And just when you find a cool mom, ask them about all these things. Ask them about like, hey, what mascots at school? What's the sport that they're into? And just really dig into the community so you can really get to know it. And I think that's a cool mentality. You just reminded me of that was a strategy that we would have. So when we first arrived to a town, it was my first day of work. And you'd knock, and every once in a while you'd run into that cool mom that you're like, this lady's cool.
Yeah.
You just be like, all right, wait, I just got here. It's my first day. Can you fill me in on like what math teachers are hard? What who's their favorite teacher? Who's the toughest teacher? What sports is the school good at?
Yeah.
What, all these questions. And I forgot that we used to do that, but that's such a smart idea to just really become one with your community and use that to your advantage. That's professional.
Well, yeah, so that helps.
Dang. So did you know you wanted to sell all this time, or at what point were you like, I'm going to make a career out of this? Or at what point, like, how did you know to come back every summer? I mean, I guess was it your wife? Soon to be.
Well, there was a lot of, I was growing a lot. My sales, my first, 3 or 4 summers. So that helps. You're making more money every summer and gaining confidence and getting a lot of attention and recognition. People like that. I like that. I decided after my first summer, even though I was an art student, that I was going to go into sales. So I loved sales from my first summer. So Southwestern made sense for me, as somebody
Absolutely.
who wanted to go to sales. I didn't decide that till I sold books.
You discover this new passion.
Yeah. And actually, during college, I was more passionate about recruiting than I was my classes. Even though I went to my classes, I was more. And we had a system down where we interviewed. We just had a good system of Lee and me and Gary Oschlager. I think we would have 7 scheduled interviews each week of the spring, starting before spring break. So just sheer numbers, if you got 4 or 5, if in a week you interviewed 20 people that you brought to the interview, you would start signing people, whatever the ratio is. It was just a numbers game. If you had a big campus, you just get people to the interview. And we had enough, you have a book that you're able to show them that has pictures of people from the area who made a bunch of money last summer. It was not that hard, but we just had a system down where we were interviewing a lot. And, Lee brings a lot of credibility. I was good at interviewing also. Gary Oschlager was great. We had testimonials from 3 or 4 students other than us at almost every interview. So it was good times. Didn't have to leave.
What a blast.
I did interview at Creighton and UNL a little bit. And I interviewed other small colleges around KU. But mostly, KU.
That is so fun. It must have been fun to like have that energy. I mean, it sounds like working with Lee and working with Gary was just like a really cool dynamic. You guys had a really good like chemistry.
After my first summer, after my second summer, moved to KU, recruited a big team. We split into 2 organizations. So we had a group that went north and a group that went south. So I never sold with Lee. I went to school with Lee. We recruited together. Lee, he was in charge of the northern organization, and I became the organizational leader of the southern organization.
That makes sense. Yeah. At what point did you? What point did your wife? What's that story? I'm excited for this because I'm like, where did she come along, and how did you guys end up? How did this happen?
Okay, so. So my little sister also sold books. So my 3 older brothers and my little sister had sold books a couple years. And she recruited my wife's sister, who the next time recruited my wife. So my wife, Jean, it was Jean Byersmith at the time. She was in my organization, not my direct team. But she was in my family. Yeah.
Look out.
So the great thing about that relationship was we did not date. We knew each other, and we worked together closely in the organization, recruiting, etc., for 3 years, I think, before we started dating at all. But I knew her real well, and I was her manager, so we would do goal setting and things together. I kind of started liking her a lot. So I finally asked her out, and at the end we went and saw a movie and had dinner, and I actually took her into a jewelry store. This is a true story. Afterwards, at the end of the night, after our first date, and I didn't say anything. We just looked at diamonds, and I just wanted that to be part of the story. So I knew from the first date that I wanted to marry her.
Always be closing. It's a temperature taking.
We've been very close buddies, platonic buddies for a couple years. So I knew her. She knew who I was. So we dated a year and got married the following year. So she sold books.
It's a trial close. It was a trial close.
Yeah.
You went in the jewelry store. She didn't freak out. That's good news.
And she sold for 4 summers.
That's awesome. You know what we need to do is we need to get your older brothers and your sister and then her sister and then Jean into like a big conglomerate and be like, all right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what Christmas is like for you guys, because that's gotta be so fun.
Yeah.
Did she know all along too? Would she say she knew all along? She's like, oh, I knew from the first day, or was it, or did?
Oh
did it
no,
take a little
she's
longer?
never said that. I've never asked her. She's never said that. But it got So anyway, it's been good. So we've been married like 35 years now, 36 years. So yeah.
Wow, that beats my 2 months by a while. So a marriage advice for me 35 years in, what have you learned? What similarities between selling books and marriage, and what do I need to?
So your wife did not sell books?
No, she did not. She was an honorary book gal.
Okay,
is what I say.
You're asking for advice?
I mean, 35 years is, so my parents lasted 22 and they're divorced now.
Okay.
But I mean, we went through all this shit and marriage is still harder than that, apparently. So they're not the people I normally go to for marriage advice, as you can imagine. So now when I hear 35 years, I'm like, that's, something they didn't, and I don't know that. So I'm always open for coaching on that.
I'll give one piece of advice. So we have 3 daughters, and 2 of them live in Eugene, Oregon, by the way. Yes. I have 2 daughters in Eugene and one in Illinois. She lives in Chicago. So when my oldest daughter was 1 year old, my wife was pregnant with twins. So they're all within a couple years. So we had 3 daughters. We had three daughters in diapers at the same time.
That's brave.
Which was scary. It was scary for me because at this point I was no longer with Southwestern. I was in my career job, which we can get to in a second. It's a sister company of Southwestern. So somebody at one of our meetings, another married guy who'd been married longer, some advice he gave. He said, when you're married and if you have kids, you want what worked for him was every night of the week was dedicated to something. For example, there was date night. They had date night on Fridays. And they had one night a week where his wife could do whatever she wanted, like a book club, class, whatever she wanted to do, meet with friends. And one night a week, the husband had a night to himself to do whatever he wanted. And then one night was TV night, I think. So every night was dedicated to something. And so we've pretty much done that for 35 years. And so we made this decision before the twins were born. We knew they were coming, and I was scared about not having any free time. I really was. I was afraid for my wife also. I was afraid she wasn't going to have any free time. So this piece of wisdom I heard at a meeting, we applied. It was very helpful. So I recommend you have your own night. Make sure your wife is able to develop a hobby or do something. Spend time with something she wants to do, especially when kids come along.
Writing that down,
especially with kids.
Yeah, that's every little bit of gold nugget like that, I'm just taking in and writing it out because it can't hurt. That's such a smart idea. Schedule is your lifeline. Yeah. Fridays is date night. Tuesday night for the boys. Watch the game, eat some wings, drink some beer, or whatever it is.
And of course, it goes without saying, being faithful and honest. Those things, of course, have to happen. Yeah,
the givens.
Yes,
the givens. But even like the tangible advice like that, that's such a smart move because like you could even make it something where it's super fun, right? Where it's like Wednesdays that's such a cool way to, and then your kids get used to that rhythm, right? And then they know what to expect for like their future, spouses, and that's so cool. Do you come and see your kids often?
Especially for the women who have children. A lot of times they don't get any time off. It's kind of
Right.
It might be every night where they're kind of doing, or all day they're kind of the mom. They're in charge of everything, and so I think they deserve one night off a week as soon as it can happen after the birth of a child.
Yeah, I was gonna say at the beginning it must be really tough because it's like you almost that's how the kid eats. So it's like you have to.
Yeah.
They can't suck on my nipple. I don't produce milk. Like it's got to be. I can't do it. I can't do it. That's brutal. I can't imagine. That's so cool though. It's such a cool piece of advice. I'm gonna take that.
Oh, thanks.
I'm gonna take that. That's not the key. Nobody really knows the key, I don't think, but that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing. Do you have any big highlights from your career that you wrote down that you want to share? Because I'm curious to see like how your career progressed through the 7 summers, and then we can. I'm also curious to see what you're up to now. I'm curious about that story of that.
So of course, what we all like about Southwestern is all the skills we learn on success practices, all those things. Also goes without saying that that's big. Was very important to foundation for being in college, and this is your job while you're in college. It was fantastic. I sold one summer after I graduated, and then interviewed and got hired with great American opportunities. But with Southwestern, great friends, great wife. You're doing something good. A college kid in a living room selling the idea of the importance of education, products, and education itself. I think people buy the books half the time just because you're a good role model for their kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe that. I believe that heavy heart. I mean, even from a personal experience, I remember there was multiple times where moms would, or parents just in general would go, "Hey, can you give him advice? Give her advice on what to do in school or how to like." And you're like, "Oh wow, this is a new, different thing about the job that I didn't expect to have to talk about, but it's fun to do so." So I wholeheartedly agree.
And you're a young person as a college student. You're still, you're young and you're talking to these kids who are teenagers. And a lot of times, how do teenagers treat younger teenagers? They're not. You're an older person who's actually treating them with respect. You're asking them questions. You're in their house. You're being respectful to their mom and their dad. You're in college. They've never talked to a college kid before. Those are all real big, important things that we do by selling books. So selling books is kind of secondary, really, just to mean that.
Yeah, and that's huge.
I was just saying
that's huge because I mean, I was 19 selling to 18-year-olds sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was in high school under the same presidents with some of these kids. It wasn't that far removed since I was in their shoes. So it's you're like the next. They sometimes they're even more apt to listen to you because you can relate to them way more. Like you know what life is like for them because you've been through it more recently for sure.
Yeah.
So cool. Yeah.
So good experience. So, are you familiar with Great American Opportunities?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's insurance. Very lightly said, very generally said, it's like an insurance company for like cancer insurance and different kind of. Oh wait, no. Great American is the fundraising company.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I was thinking of Family Heritage. Great American is oh yes, okay, yeah, yes, Great American. Got it.
Great American is
same page.
Saying Great American Opportunities is no longer around, so they are no longer in existence as of about a year ago. But they were around for about 40 years. Apart as one of the sister companies. Many of the reps, we had 250 reps. Many of them sold books.
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
When I started with Great American, 85% or so of the employees had sold books. So that was fun. So my whole career for the next 35 years was with a lot of people who sold books and other quality folks that we got from other places. But we helped schools raise money, and we probably raised, I think, $200 or $400 million in profits for school groups, like bands and choirs and PTAs. Did that. We were profitable. We made one year for the company, we made $18 million. So it was a profitable company. But
that's bananas.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And were you guys the guy? It was Great American. I want to say this is accurate. You would come and it was like an assembly, and then we'd all see, and then be like, if you we're gonna raise money to go to the band trip, or I was a show choir, so we'd be like, all right, we're gonna go to the show choir trip. So then you would sell cookie dough. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
and then you
back in high school, you sold cookie dough.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember any of the prizes that you won or were able to win?
Some of them, I feel like the telescopic pen was in there.
No.
Is that right? Oh, maybe I just dreamed that. No, I don't remember. You could win little lights and stuff. I just remember I remember the person coming and talking to our school about it. And then I sold a ton of cookie dough.
Okay. That was probably Great American, but there were other companies at the time.
Oh, okay.
And cookie dough was very popular, back when you were in high school to sell as a product. It still is.
What were the prizes?
Oh, we had a bunch of goofy stuff, but the trends actually in America with high school kids, what motivated them as far as prizes, it changed a lot. It went from items, things you could, toys and electronics, things like that, to events became the big thing. Kind of like your Sizzler coming up. What do you call it? Bizzler. That's not really. That's an event. People like events. So with fundraising, if you say to the kids, everybody who sells so many, they could have a limo ride to a pizza a pizza place. That's an event, and that works these days better than a transistor radio or gadget of some kind.
Yeah, I remember there was iPods, same the new generation stuff back in the day, and I won some of those things, but it was just more fun to know that being able to raise money was in my own hands, that I could all I have to do is go talk to my neighbors or whatever and family friends and have my mom take it to work or whatever.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And so then you did that for 35 years.
Yes. So when I turned, I think I was 60. So I'm 62 now. So I retired when I was 60 from Great American. Or left the company. So I was with the company for 41 years altogether, Southwestern, Great American. I know.
Wow. First of all, you don't look like you're 60. You look like you're you look like you're still mid 50s. You don't look that old. Maybe 52. Maybe I'll give you 52 tops. And there's no benefit in me saying this. There's no benefit. It's not like you're not a sponsor, so I don't even have to say this. I tell Pat Roach he looks 25, but they pay us, so that's. But that's. Go ahead.
One thing. Let me go back. I know we're about out of time, but going back to.
We got all the time you want. We got all the time you want. So no worries.
Back to Southwestern, our organization, we went south, Lee went north, but we were teamed up with the organization from Nebraska.
Oh yeah, because Lee helped. I remember somehow Lee or your guys' organization is connected to how Nebraska ended up becoming an organization, big time or something like that.
I don't know about that, but our organization. Because Lee was with the company several years after I left. I was with Great American. Right. Lee was still with Southwestern. But the guys from Nebraska, just if you compared them to the guys from our group in Kansas, the Nebraska guys were always very friendly, and they recruited well up there. It was a sharp group. and you interviewed a Townley. No, an Arndt. Like your 9th interview was an Arndt. What was her first name?
Yes, Elena
Elena.
Arndt. She was an
Elena,
OL.
She mentioned that her dad sold and her uncle sold. Well, I sold with some Arndts. I'm sure it was her dad and her uncle. So
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So Pete, I'm gonna mention some names here from 1980. Pete Arndt sold for 3 or 4 years, or maybe longer. His brother Joe Arndt sold books.
Yeah.
Joe sold 1 or 2 years, and Joe did phenomenally well. He really did. I remember one summer, he was also the low expense guy of our organizations. Joe's summer, I think he only spent, you make money in the summer and you want to spend as little as possible. Is kind of the culture of Southwestern. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. Low expenses is the way.
Yeah. I think he spent less than $300 for the whole summer. And he was top salesman as a rookie. So his check was huge. It was huge. So that's one thing I remember about that. But
he didn't buy a car. He bought a car beforehand.
And yeah, it was a great. Barry Scholes was another guy we sold books with for several years from Nebraska, but just a very impressive group. And I know that Nebraska has been there, and you're from there. It's been they've done extremely well there for a couple decades. So congratulations, all the Nebraska folks.
That's right. I'll have to admit,
we really did.
I'll tell my brother because he's currently the DSM out of Nebraska. So
oh, right.
Yeah, so I'll let him know. I was like, check it out, Marty Pyle. Shout out to you guys.
Yeah.
They did well. Something about, I think somebody that Lee recruited ended up first like opening up the Nebraska, like really establishing the Nebraska group, and then eventually they ended up being big. And then after Lee left to become part of the corporate team versus like the in the DSM realm, that is what led to like Grant Greeter, who ended up being the DSM. Yeah. And then that lineage traces back to me, to my, like the person that recruited me. And then now my brother. So it's all connected through Lee. I think through Lee's episode, or like at some point when I was talking to Lee, we made that connection where it's like, oh, this is how it ended up coming back together. And I think Elena's dad was Joe. Pretty sure, because I met her dad. I was just called him Mr. Arndt, but I think Joe was. The name was Joseph. Before you said Joe, I was like, I think it's Joseph Arndt. I think is his name. And it was her. So her uncle, I think her siblings sold books. Like they're all. It's a whole clan of them, kind of like your family. There was multiple of them. Yeah. And it's I think a lot of that has to do with like they grew up in a farm town, so like a lot of these kids growing up, they're used to the physical demand in the long hours isn't as scary for them, because it's actually kind of more of a less hours worked. Because if you do farm work in Nebraska, if you grew up in a farm, like you're working 90 to 100 hours a week, in the summer for your parents, especially back then. And so to them, it's like, oh, we only work 80 hours a week. It's like, oh, we get Sundays off. Cool.
I would agree. I would agree. Farm kids who grew up on a farm, they've got a lot of advantages in life that they don't even know that they have. One is they know how to work hard. They really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Because to them, it's just normal. And then, so when those kids would go out and sell in the country, sometimes up in the, wherever you are, whatever state you're in, and there's a relatability or a familiarity with just that culture of small town life that they kind of don't have to. It's not as big of a culture shock, I feel like. So they tend to do really, really, really well. I think I would say that has a lot to do with it, and I think that has a lot to do with the success that people in Nebraska have, because it's pretty much the whole state's all country except for like Lincoln and Omaha. So if you're from outside of there, then you're probably going to be okay at selling books for sure.
And with Great America, we also had some of our top guys were also from Nebraska, including Dan Carrington, if you recognize that name.
He does. That does sound familiar for sure.
Joel Kosh is a younger guy.
Yeah. Love Joel. Joel was the OL with me. My first OL was Joel.
Okay. Yeah, I worked with Joel for a couple of years with Great American. Great guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were living in Kansas City for a little bit. They just him and Jess Buman, now Kush, but them. I think they just moved back to Omaha. I think Joel's working. Yeah.
He's back with the company.
Yeah, such an interesting connection.
Too. Yeah. Great.
Yeah,
couple.
that's a whole they're fun. Joel is, I don't know that I know a better person who is at like staying in touch with people. He's just so good at intentionally, and it's so refreshing because nowadays you have people call you and you're like, okay, you need something, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with like calling for something, for a favor, but sometimes Joel just calls you out of the blue and just says, no, how are you? It's good to talk to you. Like, just wanted to keep in touch. I'm driving.
I agree
thinking about you. Just such a nice human being.
It's not just me he's calling.
Yeah, no, he calls everybody. I mean, it's it's just you. You're his favorite. He never calls me. No, but he's just such a wonderful spirit. Like his presence is so honestly something to strive to as a person, is just to be like Joel. and then Jess, and then Jess is more like more direct and to the point, so she balances him out really well. And it's she's so fun too. She's a funny person.
Hey, one thing about Joel real quick, because we've all, we study success principles. We talk a lot about success principles. And one that I've read and heard over the years that I've never applied, or a suggestion I've heard from people I respect, and that is the importance of writing notes, handwritten notes. You've heard that, how important that is and how rare it is these days. Joel has done that. Of all the people I've ever managed before, or people I've ever been friends with before, Joel does a better job at that. And it's extremely impressive than anybody else I've ever met. I've been in sales my whole life.
I don't know how he does it.
It's intentional, for sure.
And he remembers about like your dog's name. He'll know it's just, and I'm like, you write this down somewhere? Like it just comes like, hey, how's your mom, Rodrigo and Sandra? And I'm like, good. How do you remember that? Yeah. How about your dog, Leo? And his, like just what? So, wonderful human. Just, if you're listening, buddy, we love you a lot. And actually it's funny because him and Elena aren't are great friends. So my first summer, he was my org leader and she was the leader of the other org, and so they actually became super good friends, and they went to Europe together, and they go way back. Those the same era, and they're awesome humans. So it's just funny that all these connections come together. So it's so cool. And Jess too. Jess went to Iowa State. And she's a firecracker. She was a top salesperson as well.
I bet she was.
That whole when I found out that they were dating, I was like, get married, please. Like, you guys are so cool. Yeah, they're the coolest humans. I'm glad that you know Joel. Joel's
the last thing about Joel, I think, how big is his family? How many brothers and sisters does he have?
He's the youngest of 10. He has 34 nieces and nephews.
Okay, and Joel just got married about 2 years ago or so, 3 years ago.
No, this would have been I went to the wedding. That was 2016. They got married 2016.
It's been that long.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Okay. So what's interesting is Joel is the 10th. He's the youngest of 10 kids. Yeah. They all got married in that order. He was the 10th to get married. And they all got married in the order of their ages.
Yeah, it's so funny. I remember like being friends with Joel, and he has so many birthdays to remember.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, dude, you have 34 nieces and nephews, and you have 10 siblings who are all married. So that's 54 people. Like, statistically speaking, once a week somebody has a birthday. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's just like all the time. It's my nephew's birthday, so I'm gonna. So my niece's birthday. It was always somebody's birthday with Joel, because there's just so many of them. It's just like,
Joel and Jess,
it's so fun.
everybody's favorite aunt and uncle in that family, I am sure.
Oh, there's no way they're not. If they're not, they're wrong. You know what I'm saying? Whoever, I'm sorry for those nieces and nephews, but you're wrong. If Joel and Jess are not your favorite aunt and uncle, you're wrong. Oh man, I'm so happy to give that moment to Joel Cush and Jess, because they're the best. They're the best people. They're like top shelf people for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Ah, wow. So cool. And 30, so 40 years of a career in Great American. I mean, even like, when you think about people nowadays, I think statistically people switch jobs 6 or 7 times.
Yeah.
And I read that stat. How did you make it? How did you dedicate your life, or such a long part of your life, to a career like that? I mean, that's a special career. Not many people can say I worked at this company for 40 years.
True. Nowadays, that's kind of rare. But
Yeah.
one thing I was looking for after I graduated was another sales job where I felt good about what we were selling, the product, and we were working with educators, which I loved, and selling, helping them with their programs by raising money. So I believed in what we were doing. And once you get, you're there a couple of years, you become friends with the guys you're working with. Great group of people. And you also become friends with your customers, and you tend to work with the same clients year after year. Selling books, you probably just sell them once, and you might meet them again in deliveries. But with Great American, you would see them, 4 or 5 times a year easily, your customers. So there's that, the people, I'd say.
And do you think, what things did you learn in Great American that kind of either built on or were different than, like for example, that's a big thing. So that must have been a weird thing to adjust to, is repeat customers versus new. Like what are things that you learn in Great American that maybe you didn't quite get in Southwestern, or that you got to build on?
Okay, I would say what helped me with Great American the most from my Southwestern experience was everything that had to do with management and recruiting.
Okay. Yeah.
Southwest, selling books itself was good, but the other part of it, being in a leadership role and building an organization and building relationships, that was transferable easily to another sales job.
Yeah.
But everything, you work on your own out of your house, and self-discipline, all those things help.
That's awesome. One last thing I want to ask you about before we move on into your art career, which is I'm so excited to talk about, is what would you say to Marty at high school? Graduation day of high school.
Knowing what I know now, and I could talk back, I would, even though it was great 40 years with one company, I don't think I would do that again.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was great. But, I'm kind of envious of people who've had 2 or 3 jobs. Although I'm in my 3rd career, so I consider Southwestern not really one. I guess I'm my 2nd career, but I always expected to be a full-time artist. So I always had this on the back burner, waiting for my retirement. So I'm just glad I was able to retire and have something else, that I love to do. So that didn't answer your question. So what was your question? It was a good question.
No, what would you tell Marty at 18? But it sounds like maybe start art earlier, or would you say switch more?
Let me think. I don't know. Let me think what I would say. I'd say, have a well-written plan for every day of your life. If I say that, how much more successful I might have been if I was had a well-planned day written down every day.
Hey, that's good. I'll take notes on that.
Yeah,
myself.
Keep it simple.
I need that. I'm stupid, so keep it simple, stupid. I guess. KSS. Oh, that's brilliant. I like that. And those little nuggets when you look back, and because 40 years goes by like that, you know what I mean? That's the thing about life, is memories can be a blink, and that's really what it really is. But when you stop and look back at how far you've come, you're like, wow, this is such a cool thing. This is such a cool thing that I've gone on to, and the life that I've lived, and the experience that I've had. Even if I'm not 60, I don't have to be 60, but I don't think it doesn't matter how old you are. I mean, what matters is you just look back and you're glad and you're proud of what the work you put in, and the life that you've lived, regardless of what happened.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool.
You
Thank you
wanna
for sharing
feel-
that. That's really sweet.
That's
Yeah.
what you want.
That's ideal.
Not everybody feels
That's
that way.
This is true. So to not do that, write down your plan every day. That's so fun. Let's see. Okay, so now hold on. I want to talk about this art career because,
Okay.
and by the way, we can go as long as you want.
Okay.
We don't, whatever feels natural to you, unless you're bored and you can totally hop off.
No,
It's totally.
I want to talk about art. We'll do that. You want to do
Yeah,
some
and I'm curious. Oh yeah, we can do some commercials. Yeah. Well, I don't like to call them commercials. I like to call them partnership highlights.
Very good. Very good. I'll be right back.
But if this is a good bathroom break for you if you need to.
Yeah,
if you're on the air, yeah, go ahead. No worries. In the meantime, I can actually bring up some of our sponsors, and I'd love to start out with my good friend Pat Roach, who in 2007 started Southwestern Real Estate. Now, before we talk about Pat, I do want to say a couple of announcements that kind of have to do with our sponsorship, and we're gaining some more sponsors, and it's super fun to see people support the show. And so I want to say thank you to Pat for being one of the oldest sponsorships that we have, not in age, but oldest from a timestamp. He was one of the first few people who decided to believe in us and give us a shot at improving the show. And it's a testament to him and his belief in people. So that's, I think, why his company has done so well. So currently they are looking for more agents. They're expanding. They're in 14 different states and growing. And it started just with him in 2007. He had no idea what the heck he was doing, but he decided that he wanted to create a culture that was similar to Southwestern minus all the drama, which is why it's 99% drama free. And so if you guys are into, and this is the first time you've heard this is your first episode, or this is your 19th episode, this is your 103rd episode, you've been with us the whole time, just know that there are places out there in Southwestern that, there's, as Lee McCroskey said, there's more to life than Southwest Airlines. And so Southwestern Real Estate is one of them. While it is a sister company, it is a whole different schema and setup. And so it's a place where you can still have the camaraderie, that family feel, the feeling of helping people do something important, which is a big deal when someone's buying a home, especially if it's a first-time buyer. But if you're somebody who's always had a passion for real estate, you've always been interested in the real estate game, whether it's investing or just remodeling or any of that stuff, and you're trying to find something else to do in your life, maybe you're looking for something that's a little bit more meaningful. I don't know that there's a company out there, if that's you, that would be more beneficial for you than Southwestern Real Estate. So we've had so many of their agents on the show, and there is a common theme along that, which is the family that they work with, the environment, the hours, and the flexibility. But really, any job offers that. What is unique about it is that it takes all of the positive things about Southwestern, takes out all the negative, and just gives you a place to land and to really plant your flag as a career. And so that is a good spot to land it if you're looking for something else. I also want to bring up Martine and Lukasz. Now, if you're having a party, if you're having an event, if you have something to do as far as gathering people and you need some entertainment to go along with it, I don't know, like a wedding, like I did a couple months ago. Martine and Lukasz are two book guys who are currently getting prepped to go out for the summer. But besides the next, between the months of May through August, these guys are available to get life to your party. Our wedding was a success, and in large part was because the people kept dancing, and it was such a fun environment that was created because of Martine and Lukasz. So if you guys have a need for a DJ, if you have a gig coming up, if you have someone who needs some entertainment for your event, we just have been confirmed that they are going to be at Bisler. Boop, boop. So it's going to be a lot of fun to have those guys there. And so we're excited to party with them. Give us a call. We can get you connected, and we can have you guys meet up with them. They are very competitive in their pricing, and they're very easy to trust. That's the thing about having booked people at your event. And finally, Cardinal Senior Benefits. This is through Greta Huerta. Now, Greta was, I guess, on our show back in January. She was one of the first few Latinas that we had on the show, but her story is nothing short of awesome. She had a great career with Southwestern, and then she moved on and decided to work for a place that was very much invested in helping people learn about money and teach them about how to properly get ready for all the challenges that are real important in life. And so they do insurance and financial coaching, but that's really not the story that we want to tell here. That's what she does, but who she is really the part that might be identifiable to you. So if you identify with this might be a good spot for you to land at as well as far as a career. Greta was the kind of person that always knew there was more to life than what she had kind of grew up with. Not that it was a hard life, but she knew that there was more in her. And so when she left, she decided to join Cardinal Senior Benefits just because of the culture that was there, but she also wanted to blow the lid off. And so 2 times in a row, she broke the company record. And it was insane that when she was kind of like the catalyst for just the growth of that company. When the water rises, when the tide rises, all ships rise. And she was kind of that catalyst. And so when she did that, the belief barrier went up, and the people around her started producing more. And so if you want to be a part of something that is growing and exploding and be a part of that change and a part of that catalyst, you identify with that in Greta, and you feel like you want to help people in a very admirable way, if you want to have their back, then maybe this is a good spot for you to land at. And make sure you guys reach out to us. We can get you in touch with Greta so you can find out about how to be part of Cardinal Senior Benefits. They are looking for more people to join that company and help it explode or continue to explode as it is. It's mid-eruption, so good time to join. And so Marty is back. Here we go.
There we go.
Here he is. Look at that. This is legendary. This is so fun to talk to. It's cool to see that there's connections with people, even though you sold in the 70s. Like, yeah, I relate. I didn't hitchhike, but I know what it's like to look for an HQ. So, okay, so talk to you. You decided to leave and retire. I'm loving this. I actually have this pulled up. Let me see. It's your website.
Oh.
And so because this is super cool. So talk to us about what you do now. Walk me through. I pretend I'm a 5-year-old because I don't know much about arts, but I know that that looks really cool. So walk me through what you're up to now and how you came into doing this. And look how awesome this is. This is so cool.
Oh, thanks. So I studied painting at KU. So, painting. And I didn't think I could find a career painting after college because, I wanted to have a family and marry Jean and have daughters and, pay for their, schooling and stuff like that. But I never gave up on studying art as an adult. After college, when I told you we started having kids, and we each got one night off a week to do what we wanted, I took an art class. So I've continued to take just classes whenever I could, with the idea that I would have another career after I would want to retire relatively early and have a career in art afterwards. So at about the age of 50, I took a sculpture class. So most of these paintings that you're showing are older than 10 years ago that I did them. So I've been mostly exclusively sculpting for the last 12 years.
So this is this right here.
Yeah. So I sculpt.
Wow. And this is Spencer Hayes.
Yeah, that is.
Wow.
So I sculpt in clay, and then it's cast into bronze. So if you're a 5-year-old, let's say, I use clay and it becomes bronze at the end. There's many steps in between. So I was fortunate enough to do a sculpture of Spencer Hayes for the company that was unveiled, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, after he passed. So walk me through the process. Like, how long does this take? How do you approach it? Like, where does your inspiration come from? And like, what walk me through from like blank, I guess it's not really a canvas, from just a bunch of clay to a bronze finished work. What goes into it, and how do you approach it?
Okay, I could go through all the steps. It'd be kind of boring.
I don't think so. I think this is super cool. I mean, we're here to celebrate book people and what they're up to now, and I think this is super cool. So if people want to drop off after this, that's totally fine. But I'm here for it.
Okay, I'll show you something.
I don't think they will, by the way. I think they're going to stick around.
Okay.
This is super cool.
So this is a bust of George Washington, made out of clay.
Right there.
So yeah, so I was able to do that by using every reference material I could find. I found, paintings of George. There's no photographs of him. Paintings of him, and for the collar and what he's wearing, I rented a costume from a costume shop and took photographs of a buddy wearing this costume, and just kind of merged the two: the head of George Washington with the body of this guy in a George Washington costume. So, it'd be similar to painting a portrait, but it's I
see you. Oh,
yeah.
We're still here. I'm just trying to zoom in on you so we can see it. So I'm going to remove myself from the screen. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can go to YouTube about the 2-hour mark and you can see this. But I'm going to zoom in so you can.
You can see it.
Yep. Oh, hello. Oh, I think we disconnected from you. Oh man. Oh, he dropped off in the middle of the stream, so he'll be right back to join us. I think he unplugged from his camera. Yep. Let me text Marty. This is so amazing. I can actually put some of his work on here while we wait for him to come back on. This is so cool. Just go ahead and hop back on. Yep, there he is. We're back. It's all good. Here we go.
So anyway, the steps are. Okay, so what I do is it's bronze. I work in bronze basically, and I start. I work in clay, and then I make a mold of it using silicone. So imagine silicone poured all over this, and that becomes the mold. And then I put fiberglass over that, which holds the shape of the silicone, right? Then I can separate them, and so I make it, this particular bust, I'd make 2 halves. I'd divide it up and do 2 halves. They can be pulled apart. And when you pull apart, you have the 2 negatives, the back of the head and the front of the head. Right? Okay. Yeah. You pour wax in there. If you let the wax dry, you pour melted wax. If the wax were to dry, you can actually put those two wax pieces together and you have a positive. That goes to the foundry, and the positive wax is about a 1/4 inch thick. You just poured melted wax in there, just sloshed it around to dry. They take it from there and they take it through a process that ends up being bronze. It's exactly like the wax was, and the wax comes from your positive here. So
that's so cool. So how long? So for example, like that Spencer Hayes, and did you also do the more Utley one? Was that you?
No, but I did. In the boardroom, there's 4 busts in there. Wanda Dickens, Roy Lofton, who was my sales manager, Roy Lofton, Fred Prevost, and Craig Soder, who passed away a couple years ago.
Yeah. So those 4, rest in peace, Craig. Big tribute to him in the Haynes Maxwell episode for sure. But great, wonderful human. But okay, so that Spencer Hayes one that I have here on the, let me see, this one right here. So how long, like for example, on the left here, so we have the clay, you're working on the clay figure there, and then between that, how long did just the clay part take to do? Does it take you to do?
Okay, with the Spencer Hayes statue, there's 2 individuals, and they're each 25% larger than life size, so they're about 9 feet tall. So it's a bunch of clay. I think I probably worked on it. I was full-time with Great American at the time. So it was, evenings, my 1 night a week, and the weekends, whenever I could. Summer, we would have, our schedules were similar to teachers. We had time off in the summer. We had a week off for Christmas. I was able to use all that time, and probably worked on it on and off for a year.
Wow.
Spencer saw it before he passed away. So they did it for his 80th birthday party, 80th, the celebration of his life, 80 years of living, and he was with the company for 60 some years. So he was with Southwestern as the chairman of the board or president for 60 years.
Yeah.
So
legendary person.
We can give Spencer a lot of credit for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. And so then once you're done with the clay, how long does it take before the bronze is done?
About it's at the foundry for about 3 or 4 months.
Wow. That is so cool.
And then we drove it down to Nashville. And we installed it.
Wow. And so here is this. So I have the this right here.
Yeah, that's clay there.
This is so cool.
And then the guy
you got the eyebrows.
For those of you who aren't seeing this, it's Spencer kind of casually standing there with his hand on the shoulder of a young book kid with his book bag on.
His backpack, yeah.
So that's a kid who represents all of us, all people who sold books.
Yeah, and it's so touching. I mean, as a person like who knew Spencer and who knew his impact and who has carried the backpack, it's such a cool tribute. And with his hat and his eyebrows and the suit looking sharp in his Tom James.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Wow. And the inspiration of the pose came from the idea of we build people build companies.
Yeah.
That idea. So yeah.
Very
Spencer
cool.
was a special guy.
Yeah, for sure. And so these are the rest of your sculptures look great. So this is a catcher and a runner, looks like, right here.
That's Pete Rose and Ray Fosse. And I did that. Did that for the 2016 All-Star Game for the Cincinnati Reds, and they commissioned me to do that as a special project for display for all the people coming to the All-Star Game there. And that was a celebration.
How big is this?
That's a tabletop project.
Okay.
It's depicting a famous scene from an All-Star game from 1970, I think, where that's Pete Rose running into Ray Fosse, and Ray Fosse, it kind of ruins Ray's career. So the collision at home plate it's a famous, maybe the most famous play from any All-Star game of any sport. That's what they say. The collision at home plate. It was in the, great.
That's so cool. And then here's Abraham Lincoln.
Yep.
I recognize good old Abe. Where did this go?
That's in front of City Hall in Leavenworth, Kansas.
Very cool. Funny that they don't put it in Lincoln, Nebraska. They should ask you to do one for Lincoln.
I know. Nebraska. And that is the story of Brown versus Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas. This is this is depicted. This is of a gentleman named McKinley Burnett. So the city of Topeka commissioned me recently to do this to commemorate the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case. And Brown versus Board of Education. If you Googled images of it, they would show the picture of the Brown family. And the daughter, who was the kid in the case, is still living in Topeka. And they wanted to do a statue of her as a little girl. So once they decided to do a statue to commemorate this event, they wanted to depict her. They went to her and she said no. There were 13 families. There were 13 plaintiffs in this case. And this case took years. And the gentleman who held us all together was this man from the church they went to, named McKinley Burnett. And so there were 3 surviving members from that case, 3 kids still alive, older folks now.
Yeah.
Who,
and she's the one that's down the steps, right? She's the one that's on the steps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said there were 3 of them, and yeah.
They said this is the gentleman. So I met his son, got some photographs, and
wow, that is so cool. And I remember somebody mentioned about her recently that she was on. I think it was like the anniversary of it or something, and they were talking about how she was still alive. And it's like,
okay,
there's still Linda Brown. Is that her?
Yeah, it's Linda. You're right. Yeah.
And they were talking about like how they're still like that person's still alive. That's how recent that still was. Like people think that was like, I mean, technically it is history, but it's like, no, there's people alive that still, couldn't drink out of the same water fountain. So that's nuts.
And so the Brown versus Board of Education for the history it was back in the 50s. I think it was 53. And before then, communities could have schools that did not allow African-American kids into their schools. So they had separate schools for decades here in America for Black students and white students.
Yeah. And now it's so crazy.
Yeah. And that was 50s. I was born in the 50s. That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. Like you were going to school when that was either just happening or it happened. Yeah. Like that's bananas. And then you have some busts here. This is super cool.
Yeah. So there's some Southwestern busts in there. But I do busts. I do busts for for the Carolina Panthers and for the Kansas City Chiefs for their Hall of Honor. Some football teams will honor. They'll have their. The NFL has a NFL Hall of Honor, Hall of Fame, but some of the teams also have their own. So the Chiefs, I've done 5 of their last 6 busts for their players there that they inducted into their Hall of Fame.
Whew, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's a fun relationship. I like it. It's going well.
Is this Mr. Truman?
Yeah. That's
President Truman.
Wanda Dickens working
there
Southwestern.
She is. Fred Prevost. Look at them. So cool. This is again Mr. Lincoln, Tony Richardson. There you go. Hall of Honor inductee for the Kansas City Chiefs. So here's a question: when you're as an artist, so let's say there's a book kid listening that's an artist, and they're like, "Well, how did you get to do so many cool, pieces of work for such a big organization? Like, how did you get that commission? Like, how did you get your foot in the door?" I feel like if I was an artist right now, the big, besides trying to make sure that my art is how I want it to be, which I guess is part of the trick. Once I have it, like, how do I make it so that I can have the Kansas City Chiefs call me or whatever? Like, you know what I mean? Big projects.
Well, it's a good question. A lot of Bookfield stuff applies to running a small business, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as a full-time artist, I'm running a small business. It's an LLC. And I did have to, once I decided, actually before the pandemic, sculpting has been my focus for a while now. I've been retired for 3 years. So I've been pretty much full-time sculpting for 3 years. But before the pandemic, 2 years ago, I was also painting, and I had my first show coming up painting. And I was also teaching 5 days a week, teaching art. So I was I had my, I was doing several things. With the pandemic, it came, my classes dried up. The Chiefs stopped doing, since we didn't have fans at the stands, they didn't want to have any ceremonies to celebrate any players. Same with the Panthers. So my teaching dried up. All my commissions dried up. The art show dried up because, people were not going to fairs. But, everything applies. For one thing, as far as to answer your question about the big organizations, it helped to have the confidence to call on them. So can I tell you a story real quick?
Yes, please. It's your mics. It's a ponytail. This is part of it. Happy to be here for it.
Okay, once
I'm honored
again,
that you're here. This is so cool.
oh, thanks. So even though I was a full-time salesperson, I was doing art on a weekly basis, for 30 or 40 years, between college and now. And I firmly believe every human is gifted in some creative way, whether they're good at writing, or they play an instrument, or they're just gifted with a voice. So I was gifted with the ability to produce good artwork. So having the confidence that comes with being in sales and working hard, I decided as a sculptor, who commissions people to do sculptures. What I had been studying for a while was portrait painting. Okay, so that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. It's painting portraits. But in the Midwest, people don't really pay to have portraits done as much as they do down south or in another era. People now, photographs are what people, you probably don't know many people who have painted portraits in their house of their family. Do you?
No, actually, no.
Okay. Right. So once I discovered sculpture, I took a class is what I did. I took a class for about 6 months, one night a week with a guy. And I said, what should I sculpt? He said, why don't you sculpt a human, like a bust? So I went to church that Sunday. I looked around. I said, I want to sculpt that guy. And if he says no, I'll ask that guy. If he says no, I'll ask that guy. There are people I knew. So the first guy I asked, I said, I'm taking a class. Do you want to be my model? He said, yeah. Because I'm not going to buy it when you're done. Because it costs to cast it in the bronze. So sculpted him. It looked pretty good when it was done. Then I asked Gary Olschlager, who I mentioned earlier, who sold books, good friend of mine. He also said, yeah, I'll do it, but I'm not going to pay for it. So I did a second. And then I decided, well, I'll do a bust of Abraham Lincoln, because people might want to buy that. More than one person. So I did a bust of Abraham Lincoln, and I thought it was pretty good. So I took photographs of it, and this is where the sales part comes in. I decided to, didn't really have a budget for marketing, but I decided to email it to every Lincoln, high school in America, or every Lincoln college, every Lincoln, anything I could think of. So I sent about 400 emails out. I also emailed it to Henry Bedford and to one of my sponsors from work, from Great American, who was a Lincoln enthusiast. And of the hundreds of emails, only 2 people responded that were positively. It was Henry Bedford and this people who knew me. So that's kind of interesting, And Henry commissioned me to do 5 projects over the next several years. And the other gal bought my bust of Lincoln and commissioned me to do a 9-foot statue of Lincoln. So that was in my second year of sculpting. So that was how I got started. And I decided, I bet you sports teams should be the market I go for. Professional sports teams, NFL, Major League Baseball, NHL, and NBA. And so I said, well, I'm going to email all the teams and send them my picture of Abraham Lincoln. So I tried to email all the Major League Baseball teams the first day, like right away. And I realized it's hard to find the email address of the front office of Major League Baseball teams or NFL teams. They don't publicize the owner's email address or anybody in the front office email address. Major League Baseball owns, I believe, all the websites of all the Major League Baseball teams. They're all the same, and it's hard to get in there. So I just kind of guessed some emails, sent out a couple emails, and I sent out 3 emails and got a response from one of them. I got a response from the Razorbacks, whoever I sent it to.
Arizona.
Yeah, they said, yeah, we've been thinking about having a statue done to celebrate the anniversary of our World Series win.
Yeah.
And so now I've only been sculpting a year, but I'm going for it I'm going for the Major League Baseball teams. And that never amounted to anything. Once they heard my price, I don't think they've ever done it, but they wanted to commemorate their World Series win. So it convinced me that it might be the way to go. So I started emailing or sending brochures to all the front offices of all these teams, or I'd pick somebody from their website. It does publicize who's in the front office. Usually 40 or 50 people has their position. So I would mail them a brochure with some pictures of some sculptures I had done and just follow up. And the Chiefs, my hometown team, it took 5 years till I got that commission because they had been using somebody else. So they had used her, and they heard from me a couple times a year, and it finally turned out where I was next in line.
I will persist until I succeed.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that is so cool.
So I've been pretty much focusing on one of my markets is sports teams. Yeah.
And now you can use like whoever contact you have there to be like, hey, who do you know in other teams that might be interested? And then you just referrals from there. Once you get one, it
does help. Work. And that's definitely work. And from every customer I've had, I've got letters of recommendation from them, encouraging others to work with me. So it helps.
And as an artist, and I hope it's okay I ask this, but like,
yeah.
And to be vulnerable here, I mean, and this is what I love about the podcast is we're here to be open, right? And on the air. But sometimes when I first started monetizing this thing, and it's like, man, how do you combat like I'm definitely worth this much, so not to cheapen your price, right? But at the same time, not balance out like the fact that you're just starting out. Like, how do you combat that? Like that maybe insecurity of like, well, why would someone pay a lot for my bust? I'm only 5 years into sculpting. You know what I'm saying? Like, did you ever get that doubt? Because like for me, sometimes I feel like, man, we've been around for 1.5 years, and like, who the heck am I to ask all these people to sponsor us to, but then sometimes I'm like, you know what? No, because we're doing a cool thing and this is important and we have a big connection and a big following. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but you don't, you're just starting out, so like, how do you combat that doubt of I just started or I'm a rookie or I'm new, right? To be able to value yourself correctly and big time in a big way.
It's a good question. And I probably undervalue myself as much as you undervalue yourself on our prices, but some of it's trial and error. I've made some mistakes because, you don't always know what it's going to cost you to do the job. It'd be like someone doing work on your house. They might give you a quote and discover they need to take out a wall that they weren't expecting to take out. And what do they find out? What's inside the wall? There's asbestos in there now. And I've made the mistake of giving a price and then losing money on a project.
Yeah. That's I understand. Well, because like. And it's kind of the same way here. You know what I mean? It's we just have grown so quickly. Now we're not getting 1 million views right now, right? And maybe someday, hopefully someday, right? But when I think about like where we are and where we've come from, like if you were to tell me in November of 2020 that by March, we'd have as many views as we do, and like we would be known in the way that we are. Not like every book person knows about us, but when I call somebody to be a guest or talk to them, they're like, "Oh yeah, well, I've heard the show." Like I would have told you no way, like no, right? So then it makes me think, man, where the heck am I going to be in a year with this thing? And sometimes I'm like, no, like you said, it's just hard. It's you. I think I undervalue it more than I should, because it's like, and I think any artist has that, as an author, again, same thing. When I select the price of my book on Amazon.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, who the heck do I think I am charging $12 or whatever, $14 for my book? Oh, yeah. But then on the other hand, I go, no, you know what? I put some blood, sweat, tears, hours on this thing. And like, it's worth $14 for sure. Maybe it's worth 20, but it's for sure worth 14, So yeah, it's a balance, I feel like. And it's hard to fight that insecurity because it's not like in Southwestern where you have something that you can put 30 demos, you can put your faith on that and it'll happen, right? With this, it's like, how do I value what this is, It's hard. So I appreciate you sharing that thought. It happens all the time to me.
My first big project was of the statue of Abraham Lincoln for the city of Leavenworth, which was, early in my, before I had retired from Great American, early in my art career. And we had to give, so they opened it up to any artist in the state could compete for this. And they had a bunch of people enter for the competition. They narrowed it down to 3. And I was one of the 3. The other 2 were, really established artists. One was my teacher at the time, the guy who was teaching me. He and I were chosen, and another gentleman who had done some stuff for monuments in Washington, D.C. But now that one, I wanted to underbid the other guys. So when I had no portfolio, I had one bust that I had done. One, I'd never done a standing statue or anything. And but I did know going into the meeting, I was going to have a couple hours with the committee. I knew, from selling books and from Great American, I had a lot of experience talking to a small group about making a decision. Like that's having the whole family sitting there talking about buying books for kids, So I knew I had the advantage there, but I underpriced them, and it helped me get the project. So
there's value in value in that. It's more like an investment. What you're not making is like the investment to have the testimonial and to have the name.
Yeah. And in art, the fact that I did a statue of Abraham Lincoln 10 years ago, that's as relevant, to someone who's considering a sculptor. That gives me instant credibility, even though it was 10 years ago.
Right.
If a coach said, my team, they were state champs 10 years ago, that's not as much, you don't get as much credibility for something that happened in a lot of, careers. But in art, it's still valid.
This is true. Wow, this is so cool to learn. It's nice to see someone because you're legendary. You know what I mean? Like your career with Southwestern, your career with Great American, and now you're starting relatively not from scratch from as far as like your expertise, because this is what you went to school for, right? This is what you graduated, but more from like the standpoint of the business itself of M Pyle Art is .com, right? Like the business, the LLC, right, is new relatively, right? It's to your life, and so to see it that it's like, hey, it doesn't matter, what matters is your belief in your product. Still, it seems to be a common theme, right? Belief in the books, belief in what you do for Great American, and of course in your skills and set, but it speaks for itself when it comes to your art. It's beautiful art, and it's good that you have that confidence. But so besides that, it's also the, hey, I believe in my product, and I believe in my ability, and both of those things you can control, and so that gives you a lot of really good.
Sure.
That's the piece of advice I'm taking from you is I believe in my product. I believe that what we're doing here is a cool thing.
Yeah.
I think that highlighting book people is a cool thing, and I believe in my ability to work. So I think the rest will figure itself out.
You're an excellent communicator. You do a really good job with the podcast, so it's going to grow. It's going to continue growing.
I appreciate that, because even sometimes I'm like, why would everybody talk to me? But at the same time, it's like, it's not about me. It's about the guest. So I think as long as they keep that focus, I think it'll be okay. But thank you for that.
You're giving someone the chance to talk about themselves for a couple hours. That's a rare opportunity.
Even better, you're giving a book person opportunity to talk about themselves. That's a rare opportunity for sure. That's so cool. What I guess the last thing I'd have to ask you about, as much as you want to share about your art, please do. This is an open mic for you. And so I'm curious to learn anything else you want. But one thing I did want to ask is, what's the future with this? Where do you want to go? To you, what is there like a finish line? Do you have like a target, like a goal? I know in Southwestern they always teach you about goals, and like, how do you, what is that for you? What does the future look like for you?
Oh, okay. So, great question. So I was on a flight. I missed a flight 2 days ago. I was in the airport for like 6 hours. I was talking to an old book friend of mine, Steve Lampman, and he said, he asked what my marketing plan was coming up with my art. Because I have a tendency as an artist to not have a marketing plan. Like I'll get projects. I'll show you. I've got 2 projects over to the left. I'll show you in a second. I might work on them for 9 months. I mean, every day, 40 hours a week. Why do I, and so at the end of that, it goes to the foundry. I might have a month or 2 where it's time to market my business again. But what I've finally realized, when I'm contacted these prospects, they need to hear from me, not just once, and I get lucky. And for one thing, as an artist calling an NFL team, I'm sure I'm the only one. Artists don't do this.
Yes.
Well, not really. They don't.
That's an advantage. Yeah. You have the gall to do so. Yeah.
I know how to put marketing materials together. I can talk on the phone somewhat, and the fact that I'm calling them, what's fun is they don't see me as a salesperson at all. I'm not treated, there's no wall that goes up. I'm just an artist calling them, that's a whole different deal. I don't know. They treat me differently, but it's a very positive thing. But, so I do have a marketing plan for the next 10 weeks. And I'll tell you my marketing plan. It's typed up. It's on a spreadsheet. I'm going to keep it for a year, but the first 10 weeks are, I'm going to send out 15. I'm going to communicate with 15 prospects per week through an email or a brochure. I will follow up the next week with them with the hopes of actually talking to, I think, 7 of them. So some of them I'll never get a hold of, but actually talking to 7 of them. And I just put a ratio together. And from that, I plan on getting so many appointments. And the appointments, my territory is, America. So appointments followed by so many demos and how many contracts. So it's going to take me about 10 weeks to find another client. But I have it all figured out. I need to send out about 75 emails and follow up with them. And they'll be, universities and major league professional sports.
Genius.
So I need to do that for a while. I have not, as a salesperson, been not consistent. I need to follow up with those people 12 weeks later and build. I'm going to do this for a year and then find somebody to take over that part of my job and do my marketing for me, because I've not been doing it. My fear has been getting too much business, because I find clients with realistic deadlines, and it's a slow process. So I can rationalize not doing any marketing, just coming out to the studio and sculpting. But I need to be doing both. And that's been a mistake of mine.
Interesting.
So my long-term goal is to have a team of sculptors, have 2 or 3 people who I can kind of mentor and teach to sculpt. And they can help me with projects and they get paid. And then after, they could take over my business when I leave, or I could teach them how to do all the stuff I'm doing as far as marketing to these teams. I would have the credibility. It would become from the studio of Martin Pyle versus from Marty Pyle. I just need to grow. Even though I don't need it. I don't really need the income, because I just need
retired.
I've decided I want to do more. Just,
the old recruiting game, the old back to the build a team and expand.
I just need to be, keep track of my prospects and follow up with them, like become more like Joel, Joel College. That would be very successful.
Yeah, here's the thing. In reality, if everyone in the world was even just a little bit more like Joel, then the whole world would be a better place. So, I don't think we'd have wars.
Yes.
I don't think we'd have a war forever. It'd be world peace forever. Wow. Well, and then that's cool. So if you need marketing strategies, we do have partners who are marketing specialists. So we can definitely get you in touch with them. That's a good way that it's funny you mentioned that. I was like, oh man, I bet you probably take advantage of some of the stuff that that we can help you. One of our Haynes Maxwell, he was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he's been in marketing for 35 years, sold in the I think 80s. And he's brilliant. I mean, when we started working with him, he's like, "Have you guys thought about this, this, and that?" And I was like, "Oh, no, but that's brilliant. Like, it's so smart." So yeah, I bet you I'll put you in touch with him, and I bet you that'll be a really cool whenever you're ready for that. They just, you have my number. Okay, and then last thing I'll say is, so people can get a hold of you with your phone number. Do you mind if I share that, or like the phone number you have on your website? So here's a phone number, 913-634-2825. If you can go to, if you're listening, it's on the screen at the 2 hour and 39 mark. It's 913-634-2825. And then you can also reach Marty at MPYLE. So that's MPyle, MPYLE art.com, MPYLE art.com. You guys can, if you need to get a hold of him for whether you got suggestions, tips, on leads, or whatever it is that maybe you want a bust for yourself. Maybe we should get like a horse, like a pony bust, and just put it right here. Like, boom, Ponytails Podcast.
On that topic, people who listen to you are from all over the world, I know, and all over the United States. In your communities, there are people who are currently looking for a sculptor to do a project. I'm interested in talking to any prospect who wants a realistically done sculpture. And
absolutely.
Can I tell you about my most recent client? And I want to tell you.
Yes,
some more.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah. This is your time. I'm here till when you need, man. This is all your call.
So this is a statue of a standing figure.
I'm gonna make you bigger. By the way, I'm gonna take off my screen, but I'll still be able to see you. It's just so people can see the.
Okay, so it's dark in here, but this is a statue I'm working on. It's about 5% done, but that's one project. And then this is a bust, and this is large, so give you an idea. It's large. It's a large bust, and that is
huge.
Yeah, I'm not gonna tell you who it is, but it's a celebrity. It's about 90% done, and
wow,
it's my pandemic project. I just I had no commission coming in, so over the pandemic I'm working on the big bust.
Oh wow, that is huge.
So for those who can't see it, it's somewhat realistic looking. It's getting there, and it's 4 times life size. So it's
almost as big as my head.
Yeah, it's 48 inches tall.
Holy moly, that's 4 whole feet right there. That's insane. So cool though.
Yeah. So
wow.
So since we are in the Final Fours happening this week, KU won today. One of my clients is the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Springfield.
Yeah.
I sold in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Okay. So I'm the sculptor for the Basketball Hall of Fame. So it's the official name is the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame.
Correct.
And they induct people. Kobe Bryant recently, last year, was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Tim Duncan was, so I do the statue that they are presented to be presented into the Hall of Fame starting. So I've done it for 2 years now. I do the statue for the Hall of Famers.
So you did Kobe's head?
No, I'm sorry. It's a statue. It's not a bust.
Oh, okay. So you did Kobe's statue?
And they all get the same one with their name on it and their year.
I see. I understand now. Okay. That's still so cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's very cool. And then my second project with them is the College Basketball Awards, which is the Hall of Fame gives 10 basketball awards to the 10 top basketball players in America every year. Each award has a different name. They're named after Hall of Famers. Like there's a Wilt Chamberlain Award, and they're given to the top at each of the positions, top 5 male, top 5 female. So they'll all get an award that I'm designing right now. And I'm not even sure if they've announced who has won yet, but I was sent a list yesterday of the 10 winners for this year.
Oh, so you know we don't know. We have the inside scoop. We could have the inside scoop,
I will
but
not
you can't
tell
share.
you.
We'll hear about this backstage.
So that's new. That's kind of fun. And they
That's so cool.
that's a client. I asked the Panthers. Well, we'll shut this down real quick. But with the Panthers,
take your time.
After I
This
worked
is
with the
so
Panthers,
fun.
after I worked with the Panthers, my contact there, I said, who else do you recommend I call on? You know, who might be looking for fundraising from the other NFL teams? He said, I don't know, which is a common answer when you ask someone that. He said, but I was at a convention recently. I belong to the National Sports Heritage Association. We have an annual meeting, and there were 2 other NFL teams there. And I said, I already had a letter of recommendation from him, but I said, do you mind if I use your name and contact those people, those 2 other teams? He said, yeah. He said, that's okay. So he sent me the list of all their clients, all the people who went to their convention. So all the sports museums in America, basically, who belong to this, including the Basketball Hall of Fame, became prospects of mine because I had their names and a recommendation. So this happened in February 2 years ago, right before COVID. Right before COVID, I sent out these brochures, and then the museums closed down. Nobody was answering the phones. But the Hall of Fame did contact me during COVID, and we established a relationship. And so that's been happening for the last 2 years.
So cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
So cool. Wow, man, that is how amazing. And here's the thing, though. Here's what's crazy about this whole book thing is, of course, that makes sense. That's happening to your career.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, why? Maybe a book person that listens to this goes, "Oh yeah, it's still cool." Doesn't make it any less cool, but it goes, "That makes sense." But then somebody who didn't sell books might be listening, going, "Oh," and you're like, I know what you mean." You just say, "Hey, based on who you are, who would be really excited to talk to me, based on what you know, right?"
Yeah.
And then they go, "That's how we've gotten every sponsor and every guest every time." Like I asked Lee, "Hey, who do you know that'd be good to have on?" And he's like, "Actually, you got to call Marty." I'm like, "Oh, do you have Marty's number?" "Yep, called you. Here we are."
If you had not mentioned Lee McCroskey's name, I would not have. It would have been a cold call versus a warm call. It was a warm call.
Yeah. So, Lee told me to call you.
Yeah.
Done. So be ready with the list of people I should call. I'm just kidding.
And that's the same with calling on a NFL team. Same thing, exact same thing. So it's all.
They're just people too.
Yep.
That is so cool. Eventually, we're gonna get Governor Kevin on here because somebody knows how to get a hold of him. That's what's gonna happen.
That'd be great.
Or Marsha Blackburn or Larry Whitmore. Like there's so many like celebrities that sold books that it's like eventually it's like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't we be able to get him? Because somebody's got to know him. Somebody sold with him.
And they're going to want to talk. They're going to talk about their experience. They know.
Oh hell yeah, yeah. Because that's how book people are. That's the genius of the show. Because it's like I don't have to talk for 2 hours. You do. It's great. So fun, man. It highly impressive still, though. I mean, it's not any less impressive. It's just a more understandable if you are familiar with the process, and you are if you sold books, but it's still amazing. I mean, you're doing statues for the Basketball Hall of Fame. That's so cool. That is so cool.
And it's been cool. It's been cool listening to some of these podcasts you put out of these interviews. It reminds me of some of the things that I had forgotten. The positive self-talk. There are several things. It's a good reminder of the culture that we came up with. So
yeah,
it's some really good stuff.
Do you have a favorite episode, or do you have like a specific one that you're like, that was crazy? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I can't tell you the names, but I probably listened to parts of 7 or 8 of them, and they're all unique and they're all good.
Yeah, they're all unique. So you have 7 or 8, so you have like another 100 or 96 to go. But oh man. Well, heck, let's. Do you have time for some ponytail or a ponytail or two here?
Yeah, I'll just say one real quick. Just one.
Sure. Go for it.
Well, I'm going to repeat something, but so as an art student being interviewed to sell books, or anybody interviewing to sell books, you might say this experience sounds pretty cool, but how does it apply to what I'm doing, what I want to do? I've got goals, man. Selling books doesn't make sense to fit in there, but it was a great foundation. The skills, the culture of Southwestern, what you learn by. Well, here's what I said at every interview after I sold books one summer, and still what I'd say today. Before I sold books, the jobs I had, I was paid basically the same as the guy who worked next to me, right? Regardless of how hard we worked. Those are the jobs I had. So Southwestern was the first job, even though there was no salary, it's a straight commission job, right? They still do it that way?
Okay. Oh, yeah. No guarantees.
But you're paid according to how hard you work. That's what I fell in love with at Southwestern. My first summer was, there's no free lunch or anything. You get exactly what you put into it. You'll get back out of it. So sales has that to offer us. So everything about selling books and recruiting and raising a team or having an organization, it's all applicable to being an artist, in Overland Park, trying to build a career doing that. It's all applicable, all of it.
Amazing.
So
that's brilliant. I mean, if I'm a manager listening to this, I would just play this episode for someone and be like, look, you don't think it applies to being a doctor, being a lawyer, blah, blah, blah. Like, this guy's a sculptor and it applied to him. Look at this. And now he's doing busts and statues for the Hall of Fame. That's brilliant. Brilliant. Marty, I have been humbled and I have been educated. I am so thankful to have spent some time with you, and I appreciate you sharing some time with me. And I know you're busy because I'm sure these almost 3 hours are valuable to your sculpting time. So I am thankful for this. And,
I appreciate it very much.
I hope you. I'm hoping that people find more value in this as we get bigger and broader. And but more than anything, again, thank you. Every time, I can't believe this is what I do for work. I'm very thankful and very happy that I have found something that worked and that people really like and that I can provide value with, not because of me, but because of the connections I can make. And so thank you for being one of them. And it's so cool to have. Yeah, we'll close it out here. Big shout out as we close up to our last partner, EnLight.Energy. They are a solar company. Check out this hat, by the way. Isn't this a sweet looking hat?
That's nice. That's nice.
Yeah. That is sent to me by Julio. He's a DS. He used to be a DSM with Southwestern Advantage, and now he runs the solar company. So if you guys are really anywhere in the country and you're looking for something to do and make a big chunk change for trying to change the world, this is a good company to go to. They're crushing it right now and always looking for people to be part of their team. So get a hold of us and we'll get you in touch with them. Several people who from the show or visited the show have become or have gotten connected with them, and it's been a really positive experience generally for all of them. So for sure, we'll get you in touch with them if there's something you're curious about. On that note, this has been episode 103, and we have been with Marty Pyle, the legendary Marty Pyle. And so now, if you guys are, again, one more time, if you need to get a hold of him, we'll put this, I'm going to do one more time, 913-634-2825, Marty at MPYLEART. That's Marty at mpyleart.com. You can get a hold of him for anything, whether you need a statue, maybe you're a sculptor and you would be curious of working with him, or maybe you have something that would be of value to provide as far as tips, tricks, or even just a thank you for the cool lessons that we've learned today. Make sure you guys reach out to them, connect with him. He is in Kansas City and is crushing it at life. So congratulations on the retirement. Congratulations on the success. And hopefully you stay in touch with the podcast. I know I'll be picking your brain about a bunch of different things probably at some point down the line. Thank you so much. My name is Andres Gamboa. We'll see you guys on the next one on Thursdays. We are live Thursdays at 7 Central, Sundays at 4 Central, and then every once in a while a random episode here and there. So see you guys later. Have a good one.